Hello, everyone. Welcome to our final wrap-up Fireside chat. Um, this, so I think most of the people that have watched this have not started from the beginning, which is understandable. It's a long campaign, but now that it's over, we're kind of gonna just introduce ourselves so that you know who we are. My name is Ryan Ostrowski, the former DM of this group, and I am currently at college, going into my senior year for biology and psychology. I have a deep interest in ants, um, and a bunch of other niche subjects. I can tell you all about speciation and different sex practices of different animals, especially invertebrates. And I'm trying to learn Greek.
Who's next?
You talked.
Cool. Hello, I am Lizzie. Pronouns are she, they. I am going into my senior year of college. It's my third year. I'm technically a senior. It's not true. Don't look at me like that, Karina. That's why I was in quotes.
I know the truth.
I'm an anthropology major with archaeology concentration. Woo woo. I like to dig for buried treasure. Fun facts. I'm also a dancer. Anything else about me? I don't think so. I think that's all. Cool.
I
know
have a fun fact about you. It's not that you actually don't like digging up buried treasure.
I actually
It's
know
not-
I do like digging up buried treasure. It just depends on where I am and what I'm digging for. It's
Not
very
Maryland.
Don't drop the states. Anywho's it. Karina, go next.
It's a state.
Oh no, they are 4 of 9 million people. We got them now.
Hello, I'm Corinna. I am also a senior by credits, I suppose. In college, I'm a theater major. What kind of surprise is that? And I guess as of now, I'm a part-time professional voice actor. And that's what I want to do. That's my thing that I like. It's fun. Yeah. I'm gonna be the DM next time.
Yes.
That's a fun fact.
Honestly, if your voice actor friend is not the DM, what are you doing?
Exciting. All right, I don't know what else to say. Go, Matt.
Speak then. I am Matt, or Matthew, or whatever. I've never cared, but they call me Matt. I am also going to my senior year of college with 120 credits already completed, which is, I'm gonna cry. I'm so sad. I want it to be over, but it's not. I'm also a part-time park ranger. I have a dog. That's about it. I'm a history major, a history and education major, which means in a year I will be certified to teach children about history and influence their perspective on the entire world, and that is horrifying. Because
you will make the formative thoughts of the political ideals of a lot of people.
a lot of people, it will be me that does that. So, keep an eye out. But yeah, that's about it. I can rant about a lot of historical things, but I usually don't have the opportunity to. I could tell you why the Roman Empire didn't actually fall until only about 40 years before the Americas were discovered. But
Mr. Kerr talked about that a lot.
Also, it didn't happen in the 400s. It's a conspiracy, man. It's all a lie. It was the Ottomans.
Yeah, because Byzantium
it was literally
called
just
themselves
the Roman
Romans.
They were the Roman Empire.
We just call them that now.
We just hated.
Also, some shout outs. Thank you to Corinna for making all of the art we ever post here, as well as our intro and our music, and also a shout out to Lizzie for running all of our social medias.
Whoa.
I remember.
Yeah, on my screen, Corinna is pointing like.
Yeah, Corinna, you're pointing
That's why
away from.
That's why I just.
There you go.
I was
like, cool.
Thankfully, I don't need to debate because I'm the one streaming, so I have control.
Yeah.
You have the objective truth.
Yeah. I remember there was one time I actually
Okay.
attempted to create. I was like bored, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I've tried to make digital art before. I'll try again. I made this like absolutely horrible like goblin face thing. And Corona was like, that's great, and then we never used it for anything.
I
It
think
was
I
horrible.
remember that.
It was
Wait.
terrible. It was really bad.
Oh, hey, Key Lime, what's up?
Hey. Okay.
There are going to be lots of
We're
spoilers
here.
today.
There's
Yeah,
going
we're
to
here
be-
to just
Every-
talk about the campaign because the world's over. There's no more spoilers to do. I will warn you, because of my world building process, I retain the ability to say I don't know, because there's some things about the characters in the world that I just don't know. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry to disappoint, but I'm priming you for it.
Perfect.
So
Cool.
maybe we'll
Pardon me,
just
that is-
start out with a round of questions. Do you guys want to
Roll
like
for it?
roll for it?
Yeah.
Sad that
Roll
I
a
don't have
dice
any
for it.
questions.
I don't even know if I have any questions yet, so let's hope I don't get the highest. Because I'll make some
Ah.
more. Like, rolled a 1. We're good.
17.
Well, if you guys don't have any questions, I can also just start by
I'm sure somebody has questions. I just need to think of more.
I have
just-
questions.
There are 6
Corona
people
definitely.
viewing. If any viewers have any questions,
Oh, yeah,
feel free to ask.
Please.
Drop questions in the chat if
at
you
any
have
fucking
them.
time.
about the campaign, about the world that ended.
Although I'm
about
sure
our
some of them are
characters.
you guys, but
Characters, about us, anything.
I'm just watching it because I need to see chat.
that's fair.
I got 17.
17. Okay, I think that's you then.
Ha first, I want to know Crumbs' like backstory with the hat.
With the hat. Okay.
Tell me.
So it's a little depressing. Obviously, Crumbs is a Warforged. So way back in when he was created, he was forged for some kind of like global war. Ryan really never told me about that because it wasn't super relevant. But
Yeah, it was a war that took place in a civilization that rose and fell way before Cardinfall, as it is known today, was built. It was built
Yeah.
like pre-collapse, pre any of that magic nonsense. So it was just a whole other world, and he was basically a different person.
so those are part of the like weird memories and thoughts that kind of seep into his mind occasionally. I imagine he just has very subtle like war flashbacks on occasion. But following that, obviously, as Ryan said, he was repurposed into an Embernox guard originally. He was fully in the police force and fully a guard, but then once upon a time he went on a mission that went horribly, horribly wrong. Presumably some people died, including Crumbs, who was essentially completely destroyed. But there was a friendly man named I don't remember exactly what his name was, but I believe it was like Mackie Bakerfield was the name,
Yeah.
which was just such a great name. He was a little gnome who ran a restaurant, and he like I guess lived nearby and heard about this like horrible thing. He kind of went and got there and just kind of like scrapped Crumbs in a way, like just recovered his destroyed body and took it back to his restaurant, repurposed him, built him the way that you know him as into a cooking robot, and just kind of used him as like an assistant, but also like essentially had to reteach him everything because in the process of like getting absolutely destroyed, he like every memory that he has before that is like extremely corrupted and like destroyed. So he essentially was like a child with very basic functionality. So he essentially was like raised by this gnome who ran this restaurant. And of course, it being Cardinfall, no story has a happy ending. So one day there was, I think we agreed it was like a robbery at the restaurant that went also extremely south, and everybody died, including good old Mackie Bakerfield. And Crumbs was once again kind of destroyed because at this point he really wasn't built for combat. he still had a lot of like old functionalities, but didn't really know how to use them. He was just kind of a cook, so he got also destroyed. And then when the
Part was
Embernox
destroyed.
came to investigate, they find a busted, heavily modified Embernox Warforged, surrounded by a lot of dead people, and so they took him and repurposed him one last time into a Embernox guard with a stove in his chest that they could
Because
not
that's
remove.
just too expensive to fix.
Yeah, they were like, whatever, he still works. So they took him back, but they let him keep some things. You know, he still had the hat, still had his lucky pan, but that hat that he keeps, that is, as I have said, too small for a Warforged, and doesn't make any sense for him to have it, is the hat of his now departed gnome father figure.
Aww.
Very depressing, but
So that
Maybe we
also
can
kind
make
of
a depressing backstory at
Yeah.
some point.
all I do is depressing backstories. I don't have happy ones,
Fun.
but I think that's
so
a good
that
way to
kind
say
of brings up a point of like you guys were like, oh, it's a Warforged, and they're gonna know it's Embernox Guard, and you're kind of right because it's expected that Warforged are Embernox Guard, but also in that story clearly the Embernox Guard did not make Warforges, and they didn't have the ability to create them, so they were just repurposing them from like there was a place on the map that was a Warforged like a destroyed Warforged camp that they would go whenever they needed some, and then they'd take one to start the expensive process of waking them up again and just making their brains work the way they wanted to. And then at the end of that, they were like, in exchange for this service of, what we're going to call a medical expense, you're going to pay it back by working for us. And that's how Embernox Guards were formed. And since these people were brought into the Embernox Guard and basically brought into the world within this job, even if they do pay it off, which they almost never do, um, they're going to keep the job. What else do they have? So that was the whole deal with the Embernox Guard. And why it was like, since there are technically Warforged out in Cardinfall that are not associated with the Embernox.
it's good stuff.
Lore.
Lore.
So that's
Lore.
why I have all the funky things that I do. Also, canonically, I know it's not how it's pronounced, but me and Ryan agreed that was stupid, which is why we pronounced them macaroons the whole time. But the reason I pronounced them Mackie runes is because canonically, Crumbs's father figure gnome, Mackie, invented them. They are his creation, and
That's so cute.
that is why Crumbs chose those as his final thing that he cooked.
Last meal before death.
His last meal, just a boatload of sweets. What more do you want?
It works.
Yeah, it's good.
Who's next?
Shall we roll again?
I mean, I just went, so I won't roll.
I'm glad that Corinna used her question to give me the opportunity to rant for 10 minutes.
Everybody can roll. If you have another question, then you can ask it. Like, it's okay. It's more fun when everybody rolls. Ooh.
I feel like you guys aired most of your backstories pretty adequately in the campaign. I feel like because I went out of my way to make back or side characters, I never really tried to step in and be like backstory exposition. But I feel like you guys actually I feel like I know most things about your characters at this point.
And even like took the time and went like, "Hey, Crumbs, what's going on with you? What's your backstory?" And you went, "Don't worry about it, pal."
He's just well, because like here's the thing. I purposefully make horribly sad characters, but I try to play them well. And I feel like in reality Crumbs is like just trying to make everybody else happy. And the last thing that he wants is to put his burdens onto these other people who have plenty of burdens themselves. So there you go. He opted to keep that information to himself.
I got
I
to
rolled
full.
a 17.
Oh,
All right.
So I'm
Lizzie,
assuming
what you
it's
got?
me unless Matt rolled higher.
Nope. I got like a
Okay,
6.
so my question is for the DM. I thought of this. So for those who don't know, we have played campaigns in this world. We've played 2 previously. We didn't stream them. But I want to know if you had any plans for like any Easter eggs from previous campaigns, like finding Astrid's battle axe. I mean, we already know like one thing with res that you can talk about, but like
Yeah, so
did you have other stuff placed that we could have found if we looked for it?
yes, there were yes, there were Easter eggs, and some of them were direct consequences of your characters.
Mhm.
But the nature of like the previous campaigns, if you're going to interpret like the timeline of this world and our world, the first campaign happened in like classical, like the classical era. You know, you're thinking the Greeks kind of thing. And then
Early 80s.
the what?
I said like early 80s BCs.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second campaign could be perceived as like mid to late medieval. Um, and then this one is happening in like, 3000 AD. Uh, Super into the future. So that immense timescape means that very little consequences filter over into the modern era. I mean, entire civilizations have risen and fallen on top of what you lived on in the world that you lived in. I mean, there were still monarchies back then, and that was not characteristic of the world after that point. Um, so it was just a massive timescale where not a lot of like basically the only big things that survived would have occurred in the like grand astral sea or big organizations that have since massively transformed from their original um, purposes, such as there was the Dawn Emissary was founded by Karena's old character Rez, a rogue wizard, and let's see, there was the meteor that struck down on the Gearhole district is the head of a Mechanist god that appeared in campaign 2 for a character that ended up leaving us. But if you went inside of it, you could have finished up the unfinished plot from campaign 2, which was that Spoons, a gnome artificer wizard from again the classical era, that they had stashed away in there to help like they were using his brain to make designs basically.
Spoons in here. We miss
Spoons
spoons.
Spoons has been in there forever. So
Ah,
yes,
love
Spoons was in
spoons.
there. You would have find reference to Gib, who was the character that left us, um, but only in small amounts because in the previous campaign there was in the previous campaign it was very like sleek black metal kind of design, but Gib liked the more steampunk deal. So basically, Gib's influence transformed it before it, fell to your world. You were never going to find the Axe of the Pirate King. Um, that's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Nothing else though.
I feel like I have to ask because both of my
yeah.
previous characters have been left ambiguously and potentially immortal. And I'm really
Mhm.
curious if you personally think that either of them are still alive by the time Cardinfall exists. Because we talked about, obviously, Howl is some funky thing. And then
Mhm.
we talked about Digit potentially becoming an actual dragon, which I know isn't literal immortality, but it's pretty close. So, like,
So,
they could be dead, and I'm fine with that, obviously. But in your opinion, what do you think?
so my official statement on your first character, Howl, who was like, for context, he was a person who became like a pseudo vampire slash devil because of some ar- arguably unwise deals with the devil, um, who then decided to spend the remainder of his immortal life trying to break the curse before he was forced into death, at which point he would become an archdevil, which he didn't want to do. So he started traveling the planes, trying to figure out any way to get rid of this, whether that meant total annihilation of himself or destroying the nine hells if that's what it took. And what happened to him was undetermined. I did confirm that he was alive in the events of Campaign 2, which was hundreds of years later. Um, however, by the start of Cardinfall, the outer planes, basically, and where the gods existed, was obliterated in an instant. That was the place to go. I think it is very likely that if Howl was alive at that time, he died there.
Fair.
Whoa.
But and because gods couldn't survive that, no way Howl could. By the
No.
way, Cardinfall, canonically, the gods were dead.
Hey Ryan, you might want to refresh your screen real quick, or like
Yeah.
your video real quick.
I'm glad that it didn't do it that much in the actual finale, but
It's been rough so far.
freezing like every 2 minutes now, so that's cool. I plugged in my Ethernet cable, so hopefully it stops.
Let's continue. Sorry, I just
Okay.
noticed that Matt kept refreshing on stream, and I was like, let me just.
Let's see, what else was
I
there?
was
There
refreshing
was
because all three of you were frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was so after the outer planes fell and all that, and that started collapsing, there really wasn't much of a chance for Howl. The only possibility for Howl was if he did die and become an archdevil, in which case, if he didn't fall to the, the multiple schemes that would have occurred in the Nine Hells, he would have been. So the Nine Hells did exist still in Cardinfall. Barely, but they did exist. They were a level in the multi-dungeon that you could have reached if you really focused on that. We didn't really have the time for that, but if that, like, under the city was the Nine Hells. I think the order was Sewers, City of the Dead, Underdark, Shadowfell, Nine Hells.
Whoa. That's so fun.
The Nine Hells would have been fused with the Abyss, so it would have just been like an utter bloodbath between demons and devils going wild.
Oh, God.
But yeah, if you really focused on that and spent a lot of time in there, you could have seen some cool stuff. But we didn't have time for that. Oh, and Dragon for sure didn't make it. I mean, dragons get old, but that's an astronomical amount of time
That's fair.
to live in. And also, he was a cool guy and a really cool dragon, but ultimately, even if he was truly immortal, somebody's killing him sooner or later.
I was gonna say he's also not immortal. He's just a cool dragon. But I was like very, very like I obviously had zero expectation that it was happening, but in the back of my mind I was always thinking like it'd be really cool if at some point we go out of the city and find like a really big tree with like a dragon skeleton wrapped around it or something. I thought that would have been
that would be really cool, but that's
or
that
even
was
just like
on
a
the other
really
side of
old
the-
dragon and it's just like what are you even doing out here? Go home. You're gonna die. This is a bad place to be. I have to protect this tree, but you should be leaving. Thought I'd ask.
Yeah, get the good question. I think we're back up to you, Corinna. We've done full circle now.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this was like answered in game, if I just didn't understand what was going on. But can we cycle back to when we were talking to Quazzle and he was saying, yeah, Galdervon was the one that took that bomb 20 years ago. What was that about?
Simple. He was an ASMR. ASMRs don't age like people do. Or ASMR. And yeah, he reached a certain age and then just stopped aging.
Okay, that's what I thought. But then I was like,
Yeah.
I don't remember if that's right or not.
Yeah, that was your first hint that he wasn't human.
I don't think it. To be honest, I don't think I ever thought he was human. There was some weird from the start. Like I kind of, and like this is gonna sound like I'm lying, but I'm not. But in the very beginning, I was like, "Damn, I wonder if Galdervon is related to Aether because like this is weird." And
Galdervon.
NPC man.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Galdervon didn't know that he was, and I didn't know that he was Aether's. He was at all related to Aether until like late, like really late, like prior to the last battle, kind of late.
That's really sad.
Yeah. He wasn't told anything. Like, for all the kindness that Aether was shown, if you can even really call it that, Gul'Darvan didn't even receive that much, because Gul'Darvan was a tool from the beginning, and he didn't need to be shown kindness in order for him to, in order for Azarius to get what he wanted from him. So there was no pretenses with him.
Mm,
And then he died.
he
Yeah.
died.
And he died.
That's really sad.
Gul'Darvan was a bad dude, but he wasn't just a bad person. He was made that way by design.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Yeah.
You know, just grab it. Karina, do you want to ask another question since that one was kind of short?
I had another question and I don't remember. No, go back to me. I need to remember my questions. Hold on.
Okay. Then I have one that might be unanswerable. So obviously, Nyx never knew her real parents.
Mm.
Did you ever have NPCs in mind for her real parents from the Feywild?
At the very beginning of our campaign, I had an idea of like maybe these are her parents and things like that. And I think midway through the campaign, I was still thinking about that. But then as we started up after the break, it just kind of wasn't happening. And instead, I put in a maternal figure in the form of your stone giant mentor. And it just didn't feel like there was really much of a place or reason for it. I didn't know how I could really make a connection between you and two people you'd never met. And yeah, so towards the end there was not really a place for that. But your parents were, at the time that you were stolen, the Simic Order wasn't in a position to be stealing residents of Cardinfall. So they were going to the slightly more expensive route of um, just like stealing children from the outside the walls. Um, People being outside the walls was by design to create stateless people that could be taken advantage of should they need that. And the Simic Order took perfect advantage of that. You're an example. Also, they sometimes, one thing I had recorded is that they had moderately better success with people in like these really intense magical surgeries and alterations of the body. They had more success with people that had been exposed to the like outside the wall kind of deal than with people on the inside.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's funny how you're like, oh yeah, I made Nyx a mother figure, like a maternal figure, when like for so long I was like, Celia is Nyx's mother figure right now. Fun fact.
Celia.
Two mother
Which is
figures.
not a good maternal figure to have.
Wait, that's a good segue though. We should talk about Celia.
Yeah, I don't really. Celia didn't have an intense backstory or anything like that. She was just. I mean, ask any questions you want, but like in broad backstory, she's just a member of the Old Guard, one of the last fairies alive, essentially.
Oh,
That's pretty fancy.
that's fun.
I was gonna say though,
Yeah.
at some point, I feel like you just need to have that one like mystical, like utilitarian NPC that doesn't actually really have that great of a story. They're just kind of weird and show up sometimes, like Spoons or not. Yeah, like I mean, I know obviously Spoons did have a story, but for the most part, he was just kind of like, yeah, I'm that guy you use when you need some guy to do stuff.
Spoon's original character concept was he was an adventurer who went adventuring for a really long time, and all of his other friends became two gods, and or died, and so so then he just had this bag of holding full of magical items. So he went, I don't know what to do with all this, and I don't know what to do with my life anymore. So he just went and opened a store purely based on the crap in his bag of holding.
And that works.
That's amazing.
And then I strong armed my way into living in his basement.
Yeah, he did.
That's great.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for Celia. I didn't really have anything
Was
big for her.
she like evil or just generally like a neutral, or was she good?
From the perspective of the like objective morality of the gods, she would technically be evil. But by my standards, she was not. She just was.
That's fair.
Celia
Totally
being
fair.
Celia.
Because like early on, I was like extremely skeptical, and I was like, we should not be talking to this person very much. I don't like this at all. And y'all were just like, nah, we're going all in. And then obviously,
This is my best friend right here.
she proved to be a good ally. But is that because she was manipulating us, or because she was just like, I like these people, they're cool? Probably both.
I feel like I went through this campaign like seeing an NPC for the first time, being like, "Oh, I don't trust them," and then having one conversation, being like, "I trust them now."
I mean,
Also,
we're so used to trusting everybody. Like, just I don't. Like in D&D, it's like so. I'm just like even with Azarius, I was like, I don't feel like I should trust him, and like, but he's Aether's dad, and he's being so nice.
I
and I was like,
trusted him so quickly.
I was
It was
like,
so stupid.
this feels like a mistake. And
Even
I
with
it
Zykia,
was.
you all
of it was a
trusted.
mistake. We trusted Omar.
Well, like
Omar
Zykia was
down.
literally like part of a crime syndicate, and you guys were like, "Ah, she's cool. We'll be your friend."
She's like, "Hey, guess what? Someone's gonna kill
Like,
you."
it's hot.
Bye.
It's a hot pass.
Okay, whatever. Like-
so yeah, this campaign was all about like nobody was supposed to be your friend. Omar was originally going to be one of the big bads. Nobody was supposed to be good, and everyone was supposed to be lying to you literally all the time. But in all previous campaigns, I pretty much never lied to you. Because, I mean, when your only access to the world is what I tell you, your brain is trained to just accept all of it as true.
Yeah.
So then when I have NPC after NPC after NPC just lie to you through their teeth, it's really hard for you to detect that. And I started realizing, like, after the break, that if I didn't start making things very obvious, it was going to be impossible for you to know. Because, you just weren't trained to deal with that yet.
Yeah.
I have to say, this is a great segue into the elephant in my room, which is the fact that one of the people lying to you the whole time was one of the player characters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's absolutely true.
that was one of my favorite, like, because Ryan has told me about a character idea that he's had forever, of like being a totally unassuming, super friendly like halfling or something, and then
I wanna be a wizard,
in the
yeah.
end becoming like a lich and being like the final boss of the campaign. And I've always had similar ideas of like secretly being the bad guy the whole time. And when Ryan told me that we were in this like horrible cityscape, that was like immediately I was like, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Very quickly, I knew what I wanted to do, and it was to be the last bad guy, or at least one of them. And obviously, there was never an expectation that I would win, because ideally it would be a 2-on-1. But, like, admittedly, I did win some of our free-for-all fights, but it was just because I hid and let you beat each other up first. So I probably wouldn't have won.
The cat sleep.
But
Still
was
that
great.
stupid turkey leg.
We had a lot of ideas for, like, constantly, ever since Crumbs became a thing. When Quipper died, Ryan was like, we can work this out, it'll be fine. And then, as long as Crumbs was a thing, it was a conversation of, like, how do we get to this point? How do we get to the point where they are, like, trying to get Vograx, trying to, like, kill him? Because what I mean, I really wanted, and Ryan too, was an instance where you were finally like, Vograx is bad, we need to take him out. And you go to, like, confront him, and he realizes that, like, I'm not going to win this fight, I need to try and manipulate them one last time. And then he goes back into Quipper and is like, hey, you could always just join me or something. And, like, we figured you probably wouldn't accept. You'd probably be like, no, you're evil all along, and then you'd, like, kill him. But I was so ready for him to die. I was, like, 100% ready for it, because the part of it that was... Ryan told me, day one, he was like, you're not going to win. And I was like, Ryan, you don't understand. My win condition is not beating them or having them be successful. My win condition is the moment they realize I've been evil the whole time, the look on their faces, that's my win condition. And when you finally figured out that it was Quipper and both of you, like, were in complete shock and the looks on your faces, I was so happy. And I was like, I win. That's it. I win the campaign. That's all
I just
wanted.
like new screen. Like that whole time
It
I
was
was
great.
just like
You guys were like,
I was just
It's
like,
perfect.
Am I jumping to conclusions right now? What's happening?
All I wanted. And honestly, I started to
So-
feel like in the last episode, maybe you were catching on. Because occasionally Ryan would say,
No.
like, little hints or whatever. Like, when he was, like, in the party and, like, sneaking around disguised as someone else. Like, it's just, like, a random person. I thought maybe, like, I was like, maybe they'll put together that, like, he's clearly able to do, like, illusory disguises.
Yeah,
And, like,
and I
sneak
tried
around
to
and, like,
do.
hide from people. And, like, desperately doesn't want to be seen.
Yeah, and also I tried to make his disguise. I tried to imagine somebody that Quipper would disguise himself as.
It was great.
Um,
And, like,
yeah.
while
So
Quipper
then
was
he did
alive...
that, and then his spell was suggestion that he cast, which was also kind of a hint because that's not something
Very
you
much a
expect a
Quipper
fire
thing.
dwarf to do.
I didn't know anything about Fire Dwarf.
Well, that was
I
what was
Yeah,
funny
what's
about it.
happening?
Was like it was like Vograx was like supposed to be this big, intimidating like Azer or whatever, but he exclusively used like illusory magic and like manipulative magic and stuff like that, which was what Quipper always used. And so it was like little
never-
hints and stuff that I thought was always very interesting whenever Ryan dropped them because I picked them up. But I was like, I wonder if they're ever gonna pick them up. I didn't think you ever
No.
would because what reason do you have to think that that's Quipper? But that was kind of
I
Yeah.
thought it was so dead. Like,
it was great.
Yeah, I thought you were real dead in the sewers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have his whole
Although
The
back.
other really
Although I don't know.
fun thing about all that. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, like this leads me to my other question. How did Quipper kill Don Brosco when Don Brosco is who smashed him into the pavement in the sewers? Like, how did that work? How did that happen?
Well,
Quipper
I'm
was
gonna
the same
start
guy.
that. I'm gonna start that answer with I think how he survived in the first place, because Don Brosco did go into that sewer with full intention of killing Quipper. Don Brosco was not informed that Quipper was in on the Sakar Syndicate. He was not informed that he was like. He didn't have any concept of that. All he knew is that this person participated in the murder of his son, and then came to his funeral and started stealing stuff. So like he was full on going to kill him, but the Habil sent in a fire genie, which worked for him, and you guys were supposed to meet, but we never got to it. Who was technically Quipper's superior to go in and step in. So he stepped in. That's why you saw flame and charring at the scene of his death. Because you went there and there was no reason for there to be fire, but there was, and that was because he had to like physically stop Don Brosco from killing Quipper. So then he protected Quipper. Quipper went on the outside. Quipper started doing what Quipper does, and making friends, getting them to be on his side. At some point, Don Brosco is shown to be a liability. Quipper does a coup. Realistically, Quipper probably did almost no damage to Don Brosco himself. He had friends.
I think.
Yeah.
I think the premise of how did Quipper kill Don Brosco is very dependent on like I hinted at what his whole plan was the whole time in the last episode, but I feel like just to like fully. I want to talk about it so bad, but like obviously like some of his backstory, like he was experimented on by the Syndicate. He kind of was with them a little bit, but then he left. But that's not true at all. So just to like try and make it brief, because I have like 2 pages for it. Quipper was born, immediately ended up in an orphanage, because like it's a sad place to live, and his mom probably died of like a drug overdose or something. So he ends up in an orphanage. He's a little halfling guy, smaller than everybody else. He got like super bullied. Was not strong enough to stand up for himself at all. But he was very manipulative. So he was very good at like manipulating like the guardians and stuff in the orphanage into like helping him. If he got bullied by something, he would get them in trouble immediately. And so it got to a point where like nobody would bully him anymore because he like had full control. He was like the favorite of all of the adults at the orphanage. And that was how he lived the rest of his life. Was like he's too weak to do things himself, so he will manipulate everybody else into doing them for him. So one day some people from the Syndicate came to the orphanage looking for kids just to do regular syndicate children things, looking
And
sad, stealing things.
Probably with the context that the syndicate is really just a front for the Simic Order, they were also looking for people to experiment on.
So they came and they found Quipper and they were like, he's perfect. He's a little manipulative little bastard. We could do so many little like heists and schemes with him. So he was like, he's the kind of guy that would be like, oh, please, sir, give me money, while like other people were running up and like pickpocketing him and stuff. So Quipper was very like manipulative in the syndicate, but eventually he was like, this is great and all, and I'm doing good here, but I'm not gonna rise through the ranks just being me. I need something more. So when he found out they were doing experiments, he volunteered to be experimented on, and through those experiments gained the abilities of being able to cast Disguise Self at will. And also he then started, he got the ability to disguise himself, went back disguised as Vograx. He invented Vograx, which actually I purposely came up with the name Vograx because I thought it was the most stereotypically evil sounding name I could possibly think of. I literally that's why even like as Crumbs I made fun of it, because I was like, that just it sounds like he's trying to be evil. I did that on purpose.
And his voice was me trying to imagine what somebody trying to be evil would sound like.
The whole point of Vograx was he was supposed to be as fake evil as possible, as like inventively, like obviously someone trying to be evil as possible. So Quipper disguised as Vograx goes back, and with his kind of like intimidating looking physique, he manipulated his way into a like leadership position. Not very high, but like just kind of like an enforcer of Habiel's. And Habiel, being, powerful, gave him his warlock powers. So his warlock patron the entire time had always been Habiel, and that was where he got all of his powers from. So that was cool.
Wow.
This has taught me many valuable lessons.
It was
like,
great.
I am gullible as hell and need to be a much more suspicious and cautious D&D player. But granted, I played a character who was gullible. So it's like she was accepting and trusting. So it makes sense. But at the same time, like, damn, like I've been getting blindsided.
Yeah. So he started doing bard stuff as like a front. And at that point he was like, Quipper can be like a good person now. Quipper doesn't have to be a bad guy. So he essentially like created a front on both sides where he made Quipper, who was better than he was, and Vograx, who was worse than he was, and used Quipper as like his face in the public and Vograx as his face in the syndicate, and got arrested. And actually early on, pretty much immediately when we talked about when Quipper got arrested, the reason Quipper got arrested was because the police, or the Embernox, were trailing Vograx. And Vograx like goes into a building, has a meeting, and then the Embernox like bust in, but the only person there was Quipper. And so they were like, they didn't know where Vograx was, but they knew Quipper had to know, so they brought him in to ask him about it. And then they were like, it's just Quipper, because Quipper was the reason the police all liked him, basically, was because Quipper always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but he was a perfectly normal, innocent guy. But the reason was, he would go as Vograx, do totally fucked up shit, and then when the cops showed up, he'd switch to Quipper and be like, I don't know what's going on, all these bad guys were all over the place. So they'd be like, it's okay, buddy, we'll just bring you in and for some questioning, and he'd be like, it's the wildest thing, it was crazy. So that's why he was so well known, because he was always in the wrong place all the time, and that's why he got caught near a gangster's hideout, was because he was the gangster. He just changed his face.
I also think that the kind of thing Quipper would do is, in all this questioning and stuff, not only would he like make himself look innocent and stuff like that, even if he spent a few months in prison every once in a while, but he would also do things like in very small amounts, say stuff like, yeah, well, I don't know, but I did see something about like this license plate or whatever, and basically just implicate people he didn't like over time.
Well, because that was the best part, was Quipper's whole thing was manipulating other people to do work for him. So if he did get caught by the police, and they'd be like, what do you know? He'd be like, I don't know a lot, but I did see this. And like Ryan said, throw other people that he doesn't like under the bus. He would even go as far as using the police to hit other syndicate people that he didn't like. And then, when he gets thrown in jail with you guys, he sees an opportunity of, these are two people, they seem pretty promising. We went on that first mission together to be free, and after that first mission, and he saw what you guys were capable of, he decided that his best course of action would be to take this smoking gun that he just found and point it wherever he wanted to. So, with Ryan's help, admittedly, because I couldn't have done it entirely by myself, he pointed you towards the syndicate and let you do all the work. As he does, and as he's always done throughout his whole life. His whole plan was point them towards the syndicate, send them after syndicate bosses, and when we kill a syndicate boss, every time we killed a syndicate boss, that night, Quipper was like out in the alley behind the house on the phone calling up his guys and saying like, this guy just died, you need to move, you need to go take over what we just freed. Every time there was a power vacuum, Quipper knew ahead of time it was going to be there and could prepare his people to go fill it immediately. And so, as you thought you were taking the syndicate apart, really you were just putting all of it into Quipper's hands. And then eventually, when Quipper died, and I was like, oh, that's it, he's dead, and Ryan was like, no, it's okay, I have a better idea. The better idea was, at this point, you guys were already pretty committed to taking out the syndicate. Quipper didn't need to be there anymore. It didn't make any sense. Why keep putting himself in harm's way when the gun has already been aimed? He can leave, go back to doing syndicate full-time, and just fucking spy on you guys, and just keep tabs on where you're going, and wherever you go, he knows that he needs to follow. So from that point on, he was full Vograx all the time, following you around, filling the vacuums of power that you left, and then when you killed like 2 or 3 syndicate bosses in one day, he had a field day. Best day of his life. And that's when he consolidated all of his power, and he went, and he took his basically full syndicate at that point, and killed Don Brasco. And took the reins. But the whole point the whole time was his plan from the very beginning. And this was something me and Ryan knew from the very beginning, was he was going to point you guys in the direction that he needed you to go for you to give him all of the power in the world.
So we're going to finish this one up really quick because we have some questions in the chat that we're going to get to.
It's all I wanted to talk about for a year now. It was so great.
That's so
yeah, and another thing that we should mention is at some point, Quipper found out the ugly truth of the syndicate, and that wasn't that it was an independent organization, but it was just a front for another more powerful organization, and that made Quipper upset. So then Quipper took all of his power, and every time he got more power in the syndicate, he just stole that and separated it from the Simic Order, therefore separating it from Haybiel, which is why Haybiel hated Quipper so much. Yeah. Because technically the experiments he took was a pact with Haybiel. Yeah. That was a great old one pact.
It's also why he, like, Vograx encouraged you and helped you go stop that plan to do the Bloodphage thing, because that was the perfect representation of, he had finally reached the top of the syndicate and realized that there were still more people above him. He wanted to be on top. He wanted to rule the world. When he found out there were more people above him, and then he found out they were all going to be in one place at one time, he thought, I know exactly who to send. And when you came to him asking, he said, couldn't have planned it better myself. I'll totally tell you where to go. That's why when while that was going on, I was texting Ryan and I was like, if Vograx knows, he will 100% tell them. There's no reason why he wouldn't. And then when you were like, well, we could ask Vograx, I was like, hell yeah. Hell yeah, you can ask Vograx. He'll tell you for sure. Don't even worry about it.
So much fun.
It was great. I was great. And then finally, when it was like revealed, that was just the best moment of my life.
I'm gonna do some chat questions really quick. So Jello the Spectre was asking about multi-classing. Before, obviously, you go into multi-classing. Talk with your table, talk to your DM. Not every table accepts multi-classing. In my opinion, that's just silly. It's really fun, and it's not that big of a deal. And people complain about how multiclassing is unbalanced and too powerful. But in my opinion, when you're the DM and you get to alter everything about a game and decide exactly how difficult everything is, why are you concerned about overpowering things? Like, it's not a big deal, and you shouldn't be playing D&D if you're worried about balanced combat anyway. That's not what this is about. If that is what it's about for you, then that's fine. But just communicate with the people that you're playing with. But honestly, multiclassing is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
It's so fun. Obviously,
Makes me
all of
so
my
excited.
players multiclass. And
What is that?
really the benefit for that is you can create more dynamic character archetypes than what you're normally used to. And when
Yeah.
you've been playing for as long as we have, which is honestly not that long, sometimes just being like,
Has it been
I'm
5 years though?
Almost.
Yeah.
It'll be 5 years in like April.
you
Oh,
get to
God. I've been playing D&D
you kind of get
for
to a
like
point where it's like
9
I'm-
years now.
yeah. There's only so many times you can play the elf ranger, you know what I mean? So
Hey, don't
that's
diss
not true. Some
Ranger
people do the
Bard,
same thing
okay?
all the time. Yeah,
This was my
but
first character.
if you want to do multiclassing, just take it slow, read the book, have your daydreams, and don't worry too much about the balance. And if you are really worried about it, you can talk to someone who knows, who's like really familiar with the material. In fact, if you have any specific questions, I'm usually pretty good at that kind of thing. But
Ryan has
just
helped me
communicate with
build
people.
all of my characters.
If I
Every
can.
time I've built a character, Ryan has been there to assist me. I'm pretty sure most of my characters are the brainchild of Ryan rather than me. In spur of the moment, made in 5 minutes. And if I can do it, you can do it, Jello the Spectacular. For
I think
sure.
the one thing for multiclassing is if it's your first one, don't multiclass with Warlock because the spell slots don't make any sense.
If you understand Warlock already, Warlock is a
Yeah.
very easy and good multi-class. However, if you don't understand Warlock right now, don't do it.
Also, do not multi-class Barbarian with a spellcaster because you cannot cast spells while you're raging.
Yeah.
So it makes
Yeah.
it completely worthless, pretty much. I mean,
Or do
it's
and just
okay.
be prepared for that balance.
yeah, I mean,
'Cause if
be
you wanna
prepared
play a
to
doctor-
either cast spells or not cast spells, but you
Yeah.
can't do
It's
both.
like I had
If
some
you want a
abilities
Jekyll and
that
Hyde who's a cleric and barbarian, I mean, that'd be
Oh
such
my
a
God.
cool deal. It won't be good, but it'll be very fun, and that's what it's all about.
I will
Sorry,
also
interrupted
say,
you, Lizzie.
oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even though, because obviously Nyx is a barbarian rogue, so not a spellcaster, but she had some stuff that could cast spells, and so like it was like little sprinkled in ad stuff that I had to like really think about. Like I couldn't just immediately go into a rage at the beginning of my turn if I wanted to use those spells, and so it like kind of made things a little difficult sometimes, but it also like kept me in check, made for some like interesting combat choices, and like it made me think like, okay, am I going to prioritize getting only half damage on stuff, or am I going to prioritize doing some really cool magic shit real quick? Like, it's just, it kind of give or take. And multi-class is just a really fun way to like spice up your character and their story. Like, I've played some weird combos and it's fun.
And you're about to.
And I'm about to play a weird combo. Oh, so exciting.
And honestly, to be super, you know what? I think Paladin and Warlock are two classes that almost shouldn't be done alone. And that's not obvious. That obviously that's not a full truth. But like the whole deal with a Warlock is you make a pact with some powerful being in order to get power. What person pre-level 1 is like, I need power? I always imagine that it's way better for a warlock to be like a fighter or anything else. And then at some point in their adventure realize that they don't have a chance at doing something they really need to do. And then you make that pact. Warlocks make great multi-classes just for that reason. And also, another great thing about multi-classes is that overwhelmingly most classes are really front heavy. So you can get the meat of a class in the first 2 or 3 levels. Some of them are a lot better than others. Don't multi-class into. Usually, what happens when you multi-class is you have a main class and then you have a dip. Sometimes people do half and half. Don't dip into wizard. That's worthless. Normally, I don't recommend dipping into sorcerer, but
different classes scale at different speeds, I
Mhm.
would say.
Mhm.
Like a
Mhm.
lot of like fighting classes have kind of a linear progression, or if not
Yeah.
like a hump and then like a line. A lot of
Mhm.
spell casting classes are very exponential. A lot of spell casting classes
Mhm.
are okay the first like 5 or 10 levels. You can keep up, but then the second you hit like 5th or 6th level spells, all of a sudden you are like the god on the battlefield that is like 3-shotting bad guys.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
constantly.
So just be aware of the fact that most campaigns don't really go past level 7, and if you're multi-classing, that means you only get to a maximum of 3 or 4 in one of your classes. So if you're doing something like wizard or sorcerer, you're really limiting how many levels and spells you get. So
I was gonna say
focus on martial classes
you can
or
even
like
see
warlock.
the like progression of like spellcasting power just in like Crumbs. And Crumbs was only here for a third of the campaign. When Crumbs first started, he mostly used his axe and mostly did melee damage. The second I hit a high enough level in cleric where I had call lightning, I used it all the time because it just did more damage than my axe did a good chunk of the time. At some point, you just get spells that are very powerful, but that's why if you're gonna do that, be aware and make sure you have enough levels to get to that point. Because otherwise, like, I didn't use that many cleric abilities. I had some like okay healing spells, but a guiding bolt all
Um,
the time. I will also
so
say,
one of the yeah.
really just to like one more suggestion is it costs money, but D&D Beyond, best resource ever. I would not be able to
So
accomplish
helpful.
half of what
It's
I
so
accomplish D&D wise if I didn't have that, because I I'm pretty sure I'm the one that content shares for our campaign, because I am bad with money. I'm gonna say that right now. I have bought most of the books on D&D Beyond at this point, if not at least half of them. So it makes it extremely easy because it puts all of that information into one spot. When you click races, it shows you every race from every book that you own. If you don't have D&D Beyond, that means flipping through all of your books that have races and finding all of that information page by page. I mean, personally, I would recommend, if you're going to get into D&D, buy the books on D&D Beyond before you buy physical copies, because they're just more useful on D&D Beyond than they are physically. I mean, I have
I
some physical books, but I only have the core rule books. I do not have anything else. But on D&D Beyond, I have dozens of books because that is just a better place to buy them, because they're more bang for your buck.
Something else to keep in mind, if you aren't willing to, dish out the $30 per book, what you can do is Google, just like, I'm interested in monk subclasses. I want a multi-class in this monk. Let's see what I'm getting started in. You can just Google monk subclasses, look through them and be like, Way of the Shadow, that sounds cool. Look at those abilities. And when you do multi-class, you should have a little bit of forethought. And then just like, look, okay, I like that. And then you can go into D&D Beyond, and for $2, you can buy Way of the Shadow Monk individually, as opposed to buying the whole book that it's attached to. So
Which I
that's a
do a lot
great
of
way
that
of
with.
doing that. Yeah, and if
I
you're
have bought
interested in
just
like a
races in
bunch
some
of
books.
spells, yeah, and if you're interested in a bunch of spells, you can buy like 30 spells for like $4 or $5.
Mhm.
Um, that then like bundles associated. So just like keep that in mind as you're doing it for the most economic means for you. So
That
the
said,
other one
you can also
yeah.
find pretty much any D&D book in a free PDF online. You don't actually have to pay any money to play D&D. I didn't put a cent into D&D for the first like 4 years that I played. I think the first time I actually spent money on D&D was when I started teaching Ryan how to play, and I think that was when I finally bought like physical dice and like a player's handbook was for that campaign. And that was just so that I could very conveniently be like, hey everybody, you want to make a character? Here's the player's handbook. Flip through that and look at it. Otherwise, I still just used the PDF on my computer.
Yeah, that's a good point. Except they actually shut down the Trove, which is
Yeah,
where
but
I
like,
got a lot of mine.
you can still
So
find
you
them.
can still find them. It's just a little bit harder.
You
And
can
to be
still find
honest
them.
with you, I don't know how we got away with it for as long as we did.
And you
Also,
can
they
find
probably deserve their
3.5
money.
if you want to rip all your hair out. I started on 3.5, and so did Ryan. And it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's so many. There's like
It's a lot.
45 books at least.
It's a lot.
So another question we got from Keyline, one of our best supporters, is what does Tarask meat taste like? Now that very much depended on where in the Tarask it came from. The overwhelming majority of the meat just came from like parts of the skin that were folded out, skin and scale that were folded out and harvested, and then they just literally took rakes across the meat and just like collected up. That's what that was the primary industry in the scale district, is they just took rakes across the open flesh and just dug it out, and all the while trying to fight off mold and all that kind of other stuff and infections, and simultaneously doing magic on the Tarask to keep it asleep while they harvested its flesh. And that stuff tasted, it was very tough and like gamey, because it's like a giant muscular lean creature. Tarasks don't have a lot of fat on them. So it didn't taste good, and it was most primarily ground into like a hot dog or like hamburger kind of material,
I mean,
because it was pretty unbearable in any other way. You aren't eating Tarask steaks, you know? But there were ways and parts of it that were cut that were slightly more risky to harvest and more expensive sometimes. And these were higher end steaks that would be normally eaten by, say, the middle class, if there was such a thing in Cardinfall. And those tasted a little bit better. Also, the bone marrow was sometimes eaten because it was very nutritious. And, I don't know that it would taste better, because I honestly don't know what bone marrow tastes like. But people did eat that a lot, and that's why the insides of the bones were mined so much.
It's also worth mentioning, I think Tarasks are like mostly reptilian.
They are, yeah.
If you ever had like alligator, probably close to that.
It's sort of close, but a primary difference between like the way meat is red or white is based on their lifestyle, not reptilianness. And
Well, yeah.
white meat is good for animals that are like sedentary and then do big bursts of activity.
It's like an
Which,
alligator.
to be fair, is kind of what a Tarask does, because they sleep for centuries and then they destroy the entirety of all the civilizations in the world, then go back to sleep for millennia. But yeah, nonetheless, Tarask does have light meat and dark meat. But I started by saying Matt was wrong, but in the end I convinced myself and I agree. It would be a whiter meat. Yeah. So I think that's it for Tarask meat.
I'm trying to think of more questions, but now I'm just like reminiscing a lot. I'm like stuck in dreamland.
I have something for you. You want to know what the backstory for I was gonna say Zarius, but maybe we should start with a lower tier character first. Y'all want to know what was up with Zykia?
Yes.
Did you just call
Oh.
Zykia lower tier around Lizzie?
God.
Well, I mean, like, not a
Literally
big
my
I know,
bad.
I'm just kidding.
girlfriend.
Just kidding.
Do
Yeah,
not
I
call me.
know. She Zykia was born and raised in the Gearhole district. Her family is not that much of a factor, but they weren't an exceptional part of her life. Um, their culture didn't really look at parenthood in the standard way that other races did, and Cardinfall wasn't exactly accommodating to the way that they did things. So it eventually just kind of translated into moderate lack of good parenthood, just because Cardinfall is bad. And so she had a brother who was a sorcerer. Um, and she was not born with any magical predisposition. Um, but in their time in Gearhold, they got a little too uh, they got a little too close to the core of the meteor at Gearhold. Her brother was abducted by a bunch of Modrons who were basically gonna like harvest him in the same way they were harvesting spoons, where they just like put him somewhere and use his brain to formulate and make new Modrons, new designs, because they don't have any amount of creativity and they rely on other creatures to do that. So they kidnapped her brother, and she tried to get him back. He died in the process, and his brain got uploaded to like, or his consciousness kind of got like semi uploaded to the Modrons. and just like part of the core itself. So her sorcerer abilities are not actually associated with her. That is just her brother like working with her and using the core and the Modron construction facilities and his little proxy that he created for himself, which is the eyeball that she carried around, to do magic.
Oh my gosh.
He's
Wow.
yeah, he's only pseudo alive, but in the amount of life he has, he's just helpful.
So cool.
Yeah, that was Zykia's whole deal.
Psyche. Sob.
She's so cool.
I still
We
love
have
that
any
like
more-
Ryan legit came to me one day and was like, "Hey, do you want me to make you a goth girlfriend that rides a motorcycle?" And I was like, "Hell yes!" Please. Ah. Oh, I love it. Great.
Do we have any
I'm in
more
the-
questions?
No. My questions only come at like 4 a.m. apparently.
Oh,
Key
Key
Lime
Lime
wants-
asked a question.
Yeah.
Oh, how much did we know about each other's characters? Nothing.
We don't talk about I mean, yeah, we didn't really talk about our characters to each other. It's
We
kind of
love
like
secrets.
yeah,
We go out
we
of our
love
way
secrets.
to avoid doing that, actually. Like,
Yeah,
we
so it's
pretty,
kind of like a surprise.
yeah, we pretty heavily try to leave all of the learning about each other to in-game. And, most of the time, I mean, if you watch, there's a couple times where there's just, like, some heavy backstory exposition, in a couple of episodes, people just, like, ranting about their characters and stuff for a little bit, or, like, dramatically talking about how they accidentally killed their parents or whatever, but, like, otherwise, no, we don't know anything, pretty much.
I think sometimes even things change after we've been introduced. I think Karena's talked to me about this before, where after Nyx first started talking in like the
Yeah.
very first episode, Aether's personality completely shifted.
Yeah. Changed. The minute that Nyx did the mold thing, I'm like, okay, this is different now. This dynamic is not what I was expecting.
Especially because, like, I do think, generally, like, what we do know about each other's characters is usually, like, the play style we expect to use. Because we usually do that I mean, at least I know I do. I like to know, like, at least what classes people are going to be, maybe what races, just so that I know what to make, so that we're not, like, repetitive. Like, imagine if I had no idea what they were, and I decided, like, I'm going to make a changeling barbarian rogue. That'd be cool. And then we get to the first episode, it's like, we have two now. Okay, less unique.
So actually, a
Yeah.
fun fact about that, I had to negotiate with both Matt and Lizzie because they proposed two almost identical characters to me.
Yeah.
And I had to without saying no, somebody already did that. I had to negotiate them out of doing that, and still, Quipper and Nyx were very similar. They're basically foils.
Mhm.
They
Because
were
Quipper
both
is like- you know, you go ahead.
Yeah, they were both characters that were experimented on, and because of that, they were able to change their shape at will. Both of them are
Rogues.
both of them were basically very, very similar creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, Quipper didn't have the rogue class, but you would never know if you only watched him play.
Yeah. He did so many like
True.
rogue-like things.
Yeah.
Like I remember a few times I was like, Quipper, I'm literally a rogue. Like,
I did
was
a lot of
so
extremely
fun.
roguish things.
yeah.
He was bard,
Medallion?
warlock, and it just was like how he played.
The shoelaces.
Yeah, well, like,
No,
he had she's talking about the medallion heist, where I was supposed to
Yeah.
go in
Oh,
and
yeah.
scout it
literally the
out.
thing that we
I was
planned
supposed
out
to-
super
so
hard.
if you-
He was like, no, I'm just gonna go into the building myself and do
No,
it. And
look,
he
okay,
did.
that's
And I
not
was
what
like,
happened. If you haven't seen the episode, what happened is we had to steal a medallion from the mayor of some part of the town.
For Celia.
And-
Yeah.
we had
Yeah.
to steal it for Celia. So I was like, well, here, I'll just go invisible and go scope it out and give us an idea of what we're looking at. I was just gonna go scout things out. I get in there, I sneak into the bathroom, I start using like telepathy to fuck with the mayor. Next thing you know, I'm invisible, like diving between his legs, not putting him to sleep with magic, grabbing the necklace off his neck, and then I'm like, well, at this point, I might as well just leave. So then I just came back. I walked out to the street, and they were like, what'd you find? And I was like, the necklace. And they were like, oh, okay. I guess that's the mission then. But that's a great example of, like, Quipper was not and honestly, that's kind of a point to multi-classing, is I basically made a magical, extremely charismatic rogue by making a bard warlock. I just used invisibility a lot, and I used a lot of persuasion, and he was extremely roguish, despite not having rogue at all.
I'm also gonna kind of just grouping on somewhere else that we went with. I don't think anybody knows who their character is going to be until they open their mouth the first day
Oh, 100%.
that you're playing.
Yeah.
That's just a
Absolutely.
fundamental truth of D&D. No matter how much you've played in your mind about this character, they are not the person. They are not going to be the person you think they are.
Nyx has changed so much.
Aether's original concept was very different. Well,
Yeah.
backstory was the same, but originally I assumed that everyone was going to be depressed because it's Cardinfall. So before meeting Nyx, I was going to have Aether be a lot more forced bubbly and like trying to make everyone happy all the time. But then Nyx was there and I'm like, oh, sick. I don't even have to do that.
I feel like if anything, Aether was probably, in the original trio, I think Aether was the most depressed.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
Quipper was always just
You're
like,
right.
oh, what's up, everybody? I'm Quipper. And then Nyx was like, Nyx. And then there was just Aether,
Out off somewhere else.
who was like a
mentally.
moderately normal person.
Yeah, there's and the example I always give for the flexibility of characters, or just I have in my mind, is any character or NPC I ever make, their sexuality is not determined until the moment somebody flirts with them. Because as soon as someone does, that if they succeed in the flirt, I never had a preconceived notion of what they were. But as soon as someone does that, and their success or failure literally determines what it's going to be.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've definitely never had I have never had a character fit with my plan a single time. Especially because my plan usually involves shutting up because I talk too much, and then I talk too much, so it doesn't work. But I mean, Howl. My original concept for Howl was a thief that doesn't lie, and
He lied all the
and
time.
then he
and
made deals
it didn't
with
end up being thief.
devils
Lied all-
and became a weird like revenant thing that traveled the multiverse. It was horrible.
I'm gonna leave real quick. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. And then like Quipper.
Bye.
Actually, Quipper did stay the same. Quipper was exactly what I wanted him to be. I will admit that. Quipper was the first time that I succeeded at making what I wanted him to be.
We
But
did
then,
have a question about inspirations for characters, which I think is a pretty good segue. I know for Nyx, I wanted to do something radically different than what I normally do. So I've only played 2 campaigns before. The first campaign, I was a paladin, just a paladin. She was as long as you could get, boring as hell, didn't do anything fun. And the second campaign, I played a fighter bard, Astrid, my love of my life. She was just hot. Like, there's really not much else to say about Astrid except she's hot. And she was like, sort of, I guess, the leader of the group. Not really. I don't know.
Yes.
But she was like really cool and like super persuasive and like flirty and stuff. And then for Nyx, I was like, I just want to be fucking feral. Like, I want to disconnect myself from D&D a bit. I was getting too invested and emotionally impacted by things. So I was like, I'm gonna play a character that doesn't give any fucks most of the time. And I was like, I want her to be like a pixie. Like, if you guys like paid attention, like her physique is very pixie-like, very sharp, very small, like, and I just wanted her to be crazy. I wanted her to be different than everything else I've ever played. And I won't lie, like Jester from the Mighty Nine campaign for Critical Role played a huge part of my inspiration because she just had so much fun. She was so different. She brought a lighthearted feeling to things. And like I wanted there to be like a lighthearted character in this like really depressing world. So that's my inspiration for at least Nyx. My other inspiration for most of my characters are if they aren't hot, I don't want it. And if they aren't at least a little bit queer, also don't want it. So, yeah, that's it. Corona.
Yeah. I was actively like looking through my notes in my phone because when I started brainstorming my next character after campaign 2, which was like so much fun, I opened my phone, I found the note and wrote, "What Ress is not?" And I started writing down opposites.
Wow. I think you nailed that one.
Yeah. So obviously the first thing I was like, Tiefling, Azamar. That sounds good. And then I don't know. There wasn't anything in particular. I just like had Aether was 3 different characters that I combined.
Yeah.
The backstory was the backstory of accidentally creating a terrible poison was the backstory for my backup character in case Rest died. Her name was Saria. And then
Yes, Jeff.
I'm trying to think. And then I wanted to play. I had this idea of like a pastel, like iridescent bird-themed cleric. Nothing else, just aesthetic. I thought that was cool. And then I was like, I feel like playing Azamar would be cool. And then I was just, talking to Ryan about characters. I'm like, could I just do it all? Could I just make that work? And originally we thought no. We didn't think that was going to work. But then I just aggressively started working on backstory, and I'm like, this is really fun. I'm getting kind of like sad Disney princess vibes. Yeah, and then honestly, I didn't even know if it was gonna work after the first episode or 2, but then I was just determined to make it work, and then it did.
I think I had a lot of fun talking to you and like negotiating our way into a final product. But I think one of the biggest change was just you as a role player, because in our first 2 campaigns, Karena was so shy and just like and like just wouldn't say things and would stay out of things as much as you could. And then with this one, you became just like probably one of the best role players at the table and just constantly doing stuff all the time.
Oh
I
my
mean, I would argue that Aether was like probably mostly the main character of this game.
I think
for sure.
For
For
sure.
something
sure.
that
Like,
is something
campaigns
that
aren't
I
supposed to
consider
have
to
main
be both.
characters,
Yeah,
but like
Here's the other thing.
Aether's definitely.
Karen and I have very different character building ways of doing things. Karena's character page for Aether, several pages. How many words was it? Like,
Hold on, I'll tell you.
Okay.
We were talking about this the other
firstly,
day.
I can explain Nyx. When I made Nyx, she's like a page. Of
It was like less than 100 words, I think.
Yeah, like literally just like some bullet points I threw together when talking to Ryan. Pure spitball. No, nothing set, nothing concrete. And Karena like developed this beautiful backstory for Aether and like all of these wonderful stories and tales and like definitely big main character
Okay,
moment
I found it.
for sure.
It ended up being, now this is including my like aggressive description of the sounds of Sharon whistle before it was destroyed. It was 1,515 words.
Oh my gosh. I think
Yes.
it's literally, I'm not even gonna check Nyx's. It is literally 100 words or less. Like it is.
I wrote it like a story form.
Yeah, no, I went bullet point, and Karena has seen how I make characters
Yes.
from viewing discussions for the next campaign, and it is bullshit, and it is all over the
The
place.
difference between yours and Ryan's planning is just, it's really funny.
It is.
I
I'm
definitely
lucky
write
that you
long
guys are my
backstories.
friends because honestly, I feel like I am so terrible to deal with. Like the DMs have to make most of my backstory for me. They just have to fill in the blanks and work with
I'm
it.
okay with that. You
Yeah,
just gotta
you-
be okay with suffering a little bit.
yeah,
I'm
you always
never
go
okay with
like,
it, but
here
I
are the
don't
things that
learn
I
my
want,
lesson.
and then we just make up the rest.
I
So-
definitely go very hard into backstories for sure.
Mhm.
I not as much. I don't think as Karena, but it depends on the character. Most of my characters, my inspiration is always be a side character because, like I said, I talk a lot and I have a bad habit of interrupting people, and I apologize and I'm horrible at it. But to try and remedy that, I go out of my way to try and make characters that have low stakes in the story, to try and make side characters that are just kind of fun and interesting, but don't really need to be there. And I do that so that I can let them talk. Now, a side effect of that is sometimes I don't talk at all, or get bored, or get tired, or fall asleep. But at least I don't dominate the conversation every 5 minutes, because I did that in the first campaign we played together. I never shut up, and I felt really bad about it. So then I made a lizard
We didn't know how.
who was
We
like,
have no
yeah, I made a lizard folk who was supposed to be like a stoic, like, I suppose it's not a great stereotype to base them off of, but I was basing him around like the stoic native stereotype of like just very like nature oriented, very quiet. Did not turn out that way. He never shut
You
up.
said the crow from the movie Rango.
Yeah, the crow from the movie Rango was my inspiration for Digit. And it did not work out because I don't shut up. I don't shut up ever. And so it didn't work out. And then Digit was great. And then I made Crumbs. Or not Crumbs, Quipper. And obviously, like I said, my inspiration for Quipper wasn't like a character. It was just the idea of like being a super friendly and unassuming guy who is secretly evil. That was my inspiration for Quipper. And Quipper was great in that he was still kind of a side character, but I didn't have to try to shut up because he was also just talkative. So that was cool for me. And then when I made Crumbs, I was like, I'm going to get side character right this time, and I'm going to shut up. And so I was like, I'm going to be a Warforged who is only there because he needs to be, has no stakes at all in the story at all whatsoever, has a pretty straightforward backstory, totally uninteresting, and that's going to be it. And it kind of worked out. But originally he was just going to be a cleric and a blood hunter, and that was going to be it. And he was just going to be like kind of a helpful guy. The entire story about him being like a chef, like his entire backstory, all of it came from, I was looking, Ryan said you could have a free feat because you guys got free feats at the same time. So I was looking through feats and I saw the chef feat and I was like, that'd be fun. And that was it. That was like his entire character came from just me reading the chef feat.
I completely forgot about that. I was gonna ask everyone like if there were any like random things that aggressively influenced your character, because I was gonna say when I was making Aether, I was just, I had the idea of like feathers and like nice colors, and I saw that you could have proficiency with glass blowing tools, and I'm like, I want that. That is now my personality.
I literally cannot emphasize enough how the only thing in my head when creating Nyx was, first of all, I kind of knew I wanted to play a barbarian because I am a barbarian in real life. Fun fact about me. And I knew I almost always play tanks. I haven't really done a lot of spellcaster stuff. So I knew I was going to do a tank of some sort. Barbarian is clearly the obvious choice. But I knew I just wanted the physical manifestation of somehow. And Nyx is a pretty good fit for that, I think. So just feral was the only thing. I was like, I want this bitch to be crazy. I just want her to be crazy. And I was also expecting her like drug selling stuff to be more big, and I just didn't make it big.
Well, that's because you had two characters that were like,
yeah, I had two characters who were like, don't do that. And I was like, but like, I want to. And then I just like never did the drugs either because I didn't want the like addictive effects, which is why Ryan made me the feat at the very end. But yeah, that's.
I made some really cool drugs. But I'm just putting that out. I made some really cool drugs.
So cool, but I was so scared to use them, and I also just never thought about using them. But when you made that feat for me, I was like, cool, now I can use it. And I still think I only used one of them, and that was when I was escaping the Flesh Gardens. I didn't use any in the final fight because I just didn't think about it.
Yeah, here's the thing. I actually felt kind of bad about that near the beginning of the campaign, because I texted Ryan a lot. I was like, is Aether boring? Am I keeping people from doing fun things? Because I thought that it was really fun that you had like the syndicate, like adjacent Simic backstory things. And I desperately wanted to see what would happen, but the way that I wrote Aether's backstory was that the only reason she was lawful good is because she was terrified just all the time. She was very, very scared, because she was scared that like the voice in her head was going to be like, you're a bad person now, look, I told you. And so I was like, oh no. I'm so torn.
So yeah, and speaking of which, and taking it back a little bit, having Aether be the main character, I think, was one of my biggest flaws as a DM.
You're all frozen, by the way. Oh, nope.
Frozen.
Ryan is the only one.
We're all loading right now.
Ryan is the only one now.
Okay. Do you mind?
We're getting there.
We're all going all over the place.
It happens.
No.
I'm just gonna talk for a second,
That's
and
fine.
what happens happens. So let's see. I'm sorry, I lost track of things.
Something about
But
Aether
the reason why I do the things that I do and who gets more attention when is entirely based on outside of game time how much a player talks to me about it. Because the good ideas come from when just a player talks to me about their character. So when and Karena and I text all the time about D&D. So by extension of that occurring, Karena gets a lot of attention. I live with Lizzie, but Lizzie doesn't love to talk about D&D with me. In fact, she really doesn't like to, but just by proxy of being next to me, we talk about it some, and that's why she usually gets second amount of attention. And Matt gets the least because we don't really text that often.
I also
and
go
also
out
we
of
live
my
very
way
far
to have
away.
the least. I also go out of my way to be like, don't give me too much, but give me this little bit.
But for instance, Digit lost. Digit was also supposed to be a side character, but we went to school together.
We started talking about it a lot. I also wrote,
so we
were
talked
talking
about it a lot
word,
more.
we were talking about word counts of backstories, and something that I wanted to mention was when I created Digit and I told Ryan that I wanted him to be a lizard folk. Ryan said, "Cool. Here's the thing. I don't have any lore for lizard folk, so I want you to write all of it." And so I made Digit's backstory and also the backstory for his entire people and the region, and his backstory ended up being 5,000 words. Because I wrote all of his stuff, all of his way of life, his people, the dynamics, the social dynamics and everything, and Ryan helped me a little bit. Ryan had the idea of the claimings and stuff. But aside from that, pretty much the entire way that his tribe lived, I had to write. And so I think I put more effort into Digit than most characters, but I think that's probably just the only reason he wasn't exclusively a side character. We more kind of just got turns in that one. But yeah, it was also, that is the thing. It's me and Ryan, I mean, every time we would have a session, we would end at 11:30, 12, and then we'd all stick around for an hour or half an hour and talk about it. And then Lizzie and Coretta would leave, and me and Ryan would sit here for 3 hours talking about D&D sometimes. Me and Ryan would stay for a lengthy amount of time just talking about it. Usually about this was great. Here's what I want Quipper to do next when they don't see him or whatever. That was a lot of it.
Lizzie leaves the room and I'm like, okay, and then we're talking about stuff, and then Lizzie enters and I'm like, so anyway.
Yeah, we would talk a lot about stuff that other players weren't supposed to know. And honestly, that is a suggestion I would make for D&D in general. Is a lot of DMs are very stingy about it's my story and I don't want all the players to know about it. That sucks. Here's the thing.
Lame.
If the story applies to a character, let them know. Talk to them about it. Because they don't have to know what is going to happen. Ryan never promised me that final fight. And eventually it didn't happen. But Ryan never said it's going to happen. But me and Ryan talked about where Quipper's story was going to end from day one. And we worked towards it. And it helped both of us know the direction to move that story. And it helped Ryan plan a little bit. And do that with everybody. All the players. Because if you don't do that, the story's going to be stale and your characters aren't going to have any stakes in the story. You have to talk to players about what they want. Because if you don't give them what they want, they're going to be bored. And they're going to be upset that they didn't get the best out of their character that they could have gotten. Because everyone wants their character to be cool and have a cool ending. Mm-hmm. And if you don't give them that,
let your story be character driven, and let your characters be part of the character or the world creation process. I think that's a really important thing to do. But do you guys want to talk about? Do you want to talk about probably our biggest bad of the season? Azarius. Just because Karena was talking about
hatred for this man.
Oh, wait, I have a question that I think probably applies. I was gonna ask, a while ago, I wrote Aether's song, and you said that changed something, and I want to know what. I want to know why that changed something.
The entirety of Azarius's role in that in the like final arc since the break, because I honestly
My little thought.
I didn't know what to do with Aether. I knew what to do with Nyx, and there was going to be a really big emphasis on Nyx, and because I didn't know what to do with you, Crumbs was entering, so like
I was an
that was
NPC. It
the
was
only
fine.
path I had. That was the only path I had. Then you did the thing where you talked to me a lot about what your character and how you imagined the future going, and you wrote a song about Aether. And listening to that, and you talk to me, and more stuff happens for you. And because of that, like I suddenly knew exactly what I needed to do with the voice in your head. I knew exactly what Azarius. I always knew who Azarius was and his role in your life, but I didn't know like how much he was going to be involved in your future and how much the Azarius Legion itself was going to be a part of your future. And then you did that, and I was like, I got it. There was one particular line I remember hearing, and I thought, I know exactly what to do. I don't remember which one it was though.
Was it? I remember you pointing out the what was it? Trust in your inner voice.
Yeah.
It's like a double meaning.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So we can start with your inner voice, actually. So he directly told you that that was some like echo of his personality on you or something like that. That was an example of him lying through his teeth right at you. He used you in the same way that he uses Goldervon. You don't have the same divine blood as Goldervon. You are less divine than Goldervon. Um, so he was like, I'm not going to bother getting her in the Azarius Legion. I don't really care. But then he's like, oh, she is smart. Um, and I have this project in mind. I'm going to make her do that because I can't do that myself. We don't have the resources. And how cool would it be if there were absolutely no strings attached? You just go ahead and do this like awful experiment for me, and I don't have to worry about it. And I don't even have to worry about a cover up. So he started speaking to Aether in her mind and convinced her and helped her using the Azarius Legion resources. He did research, helped her create the formula that would eventually kill her parents. And then as soon as he got what he wanted, stop talking to you. And then later, he finds you being extremely successful in your later life as a fighter and just like doing all these things. So then he goes, oh, look, she's useful again. We can do something with this.
Ah,
And he tried to hold on to that basically as long as he could until he just realized, like, never mind, she's not useful to me.
Kurt.
I want to kill him all over again.
It was pretty satisfying.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, so nice.
Do you want to know why he was in Cardinfall?
Sure.
So Solar's served, actually, yes. Solar served directly under the gods. He acted directly under Pelor himself. He was a child of Pelor. That wasn't a lie. Pre-collapse, now Azarius kept saying the whole thing where like, this all happened because of like sins here and your lack of worship, and we can bring it back. He never believed you could bring back Pelor or anything like that because he saw kind of he understood that Pelor and Lathander died in the same instant, and there was no like pass down. What happened is that Azarius took on kind of like a might is right. We're more powerful than mortal beings, therefore they should be our servants kind of attitude with things. And Pelor's not a super cool god, but he was better than that. So when he kept being a problem and kept undervaluing mortal lives and taking advantage of them, Pelor was like, all right, this is a problem. I'm gonna give you the Thor treatment. I'm gonna take away all your powers and send you to the mortal realms, and you're gonna live as a human for a while, and you're gonna learn your lesson. Very, very soon after he sent Azarius down, the outer planes collapsed, the universe fell apart, Pelor died, Pelor's spell went away, Azarius was on the mortal planes, the only safe place in the world, and he had all his powers back because Pelor died. So he was never like, he always said the thing like, I'm here to protect you in this like awful event. He was never there for that. He was just being punished and just so happened to survive. And another fun fact about him that you might have been able to unearth if you went into like ancient lore of like right after the collapse and stuff. Azarius had to cover up multiple murders that he did because there were other angels in the mortal realm, none as powerful as him, but they were still significant and powerful, like out there watching out for various things, extraplanar problems. And they were still there. They knew what happened to Azarius. They knew he was lying to people about why he was there and what he could do for them. So he had to kill them before they could tell the truth. So he actually killed a bunch of other angels while in the mortal realm. And you could have maybe discovered that if the story went that way.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so that's the story of Azarius. And yes, he was sent down. He was there because he was a little bitch.
I have that You're My Dad song.
Boogie, boogie,
Yeah.
boogie.
You're my dad. Boogie, woogie, woogie. Guns.
God.
Yeah,
Ugh,
that was the story of Azarius.
so sad. Those last couple of encounters were so sad.
Oh my god.
Do you have any more questions?
Yes and no. I don't know. I feel like there's so many other things to know. Oh, I guess I do have a question, actually, if nobody else minds me asking. So you said Omar was originally going to be the big bad.
A big bad. Yeah.
A big bad. My bad. Oh, bye, Jello the Spectacular. Thank you. So what shifted Omar from being one of the big bads for us? Like, what changed? Was it our winning personalities? Because I am pretty fantastic.
So I betrayed my own ideas for this story multiple times. One of them was him. He was meant to be a bad guy. He wasn't like the things that he did that betrayed you and his own people were bad, but not that bad. He was meant to be bad. I think he was originally going to be involved in somewhat with a cult of Tiamat, and the reason why I didn't end up doing that was for a couple reasons. One was because I didn't formulate the whole thing, and the like, even though it was never meant to me, there was some like vague connections you can make with real world xenophobia, with how the Cardinfall treated outsiders. And none of the things here are direct analogies that you can take ideas from them, but none of them were meant to be direct analogies. But that was a little too close for comfort, and I didn't want to be like, look, the person that represents immigrants is a cult, is the leader of a cult, and that just didn't feel comfortable to me. So I didn't end up doing that. But I still wasn't set on him being a good guy, and I just like at the time I was like, I just still need to figure out how I'm going to do that. I haven't got rid of that idea. But then you guys became so attached to him, and me as a DM, he didn't really change. Me as a DM just didn't want to take it all from you, and I wanted to leave a few good characters. Basically, what I was going to do is none of the people you met, except for like small people like Psyche and stuff, were going to be good. Felder and Draxus were also going to be potentially bad. Like, not bad, not Azarius bad, but still not good people. And more like on the gray scale. And that's what Omar and Felder and Draxus were supposed to represent. But in the end, things look so bleak all the time. And I was just and I was basically like beating you every single time, and I couldn't stop kicking even when you were down. So at some point, I was just like, no matter what story I want to tell, it's most important that my players have fun. I'm gonna let them have a couple okay characters.
Much appreciated. We get
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Yay.
Celia was and always was exactly what she is. She was never gonna be bad.
I love Celia.
Just creepy, chilling in her little cart with her
Yeah.
questionable animals.
I think that's funny too
Yeah.
because I might be remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure the first time we met Omar, I was even like, why would this guy seems too good.
hmm
Pretty sure I was.
Yeah.
I might be
He's a-
wrong, but I'm pretty sure I was like skeptical at least.
You were definitely always
Yeah.
more cautious of NPCs
Yeah.
than Kron and I were.
Well, that was
certainly-
also just my character was just to like
Yeah.
just to be like I'm manipulating everybody. What if they're manipulating me?
It's
was
pretty
very
thematic
skeptical
that
of
the
all of them.
character. Yeah, it's pretty thematic that the character that was deceiving everyone and was pretty much the only one to understand that lying was an option was the one that was like, hold
must be
on,
lying.
we shouldn't trust everything we
Well,
hear.
same with like Celia. I was like, this seems very obviously not good. Why are we like treating this person like an ally? Why are we here? And then it was like, oh, okay, she's fine, I guess. And then she saved my life. So
It's
that was
kind of funny because like I specifically another one of my what rest isn't notes was I wanted to have a character with a higher wisdom just because I wanted to have a ridiculous passive perception just for fun. So I built Aether to be a character that could typically tell when people were lying, but then her backstory also contradicted that because she didn't trust herself to know what other people were saying. So I purposely never rolled insight checks because she wanted to believe them.
Mhm.
So it was just ah, it's very difficult.
I think Nyx's stats ended up actually getting better, and they definitely got better in wisdom over time because I bumped wisdom for a lot of things. My passive perception got up to like 20 or something in the end, and she was definitely not like that in the beginning. But I think it was kind of like thematic because gullible in the very beginning, and in the very end, you know, she realized she'd been lied to. She was confronted again with her past trauma, her past history, meeting new people, meeting new friends, learning more about the world and how other people live in it. And I think that kind of just like, it's like watching a child grow up. 'Cause she was a child mentally.
something
Yeah.
that I actually was thinking about, Ryan. I mean, I might just not remember, but with the door thing at the end, we had the option to either influence the next universe or go into it, right? Okay.
Going into it was influencing the next universe.
I just mean like
Oh, I'm sorry.
with
Yeah,
the
you
option
could.
to either decide what it would be like or like live through the transition into the next one. Because that's like what the Mind Flayers did before.
So them. So something that wasn't made especially clear was, but was like vaguely implied and then kind of confirmed in the end, was that you don't. Nobody survives the passage through. What instead happens is that he like paints you into the new universe as you are. You're technically a different person. He just makes as similar as he can of another thing and puts you in it.
Because
So,
admittedly,
and
that was when you asked us if we want like what he wanted us to paint, and I was like really not sure. Like, because when it was Quipper's turn, I was like, I don't know if he really wants to cause like, because an evil character you would think he'd be like, oh, draw death and destruction, but that was never really what Quipper wanted. Quipper wanted to be like in charge. He wanted to like rule the world, but like at that point, all it comes down to is like, that's why eventually I said paint me because I thought that was what was being implied as like that means you get to go into the next one. Okay. I wanted to make sure I interpreted that correctly. Because at some point it was like it's like you have all the power in the universe to do whatever you want, but it's like he doesn't want it to be a chaotic, evil, twisted universe. That was never the point of his evilness. His evilness was always just, I am willing to do anything to be on top. That was it. That was his evilness.
Yeah.
Was
He-
I will
by the
step
time-
on anybody if it means that I get 1 foot higher.
By the time the person asked him what to paint, he had already succeeded in anything he had ever wanted, and now was just kind of,
And now he's like on top of the universe, and it's like,
what else do I
guess
have?
I'll just
What
like
now?
yeah. It was like it was the ultimate fruition of like what happens when the bad guy wins. I don't even think the bad guy knows. I don't think Quipper didn't expect to win. He wanted it, but he didn't expect it, and then it happened. And then he was like, and that's why I said pay me, because I figured, I guess in his mind he thought like, I mean, if they're gonna make it a great universe of sunshine and rainbows, like that'd be pretty cool to like live in, I guess, and like be the first to experience. Because in his mind, it's like, if I'm the only being in the universe, then technically I'm in charge.
Yeah. He's also I actually lose all authority in what comes out on the other side of that painting. That's
Sure.
not me anymore. But I imagine he didn't pop out as just like the halfling. He would probably came out as some godlike entity,
Sure.
like proto god kind of thing.
I
And
imagine him being like a god of mischief or something in the next universe
maybe.
or something.
Yeah, but he definitely wasn't just Quipper.
Yeah,
Because then
I
he'd
don't think
just
so.
be there in an empty universe
Just like,
and die before anything comes of it.
This is great. Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely was imagining him being like, because at this point he has no reason to be evil. So at that point he'd just be like a kid, pretty much. Just like, I got nothing else. Mischief
Do you want a
time.
fun fact? There was one missing person or entity at that end of the fight, or at the like whole path to the doorway. Any guesses who that is?
Krena has a face that tells me she knows.
I mean, Quazzle wasn't there.
No, it wasn't an NPC actually. It was something you barely met. Mind flayers.
Oh, right.
They knew better than anyone what was going on there, and they had plans to get to the doorway because they knew where it was happening and how and when. But in your misadventures, you did two different things. One, you really beat up one of the primary agents of the Mind Flayers at the port. The other thing that happened is you now there were other things there, but you severely weakened their position there. And then also what you did is most of the Mind Flayers that actually had freedom to do whatever they wanted were not at the harbor, but in the Underdark. And what you did when you did a heist on the dragon is you said a bunch of Mind Flayers are moving their way up to get your
I
stuff.
forgot about that.
The Mind Flayers weren't moving their way to get up his stuff. The Mind Flayers were going up to get in position for the doorway, and you sent a Draco Lich at them.
Oh, shit.
Amazing.
I mean, good for us. Go team. Real
Y'all
proactive.
Eliminated a whole faction with an offhand line.
Yeah, but then the dragon came
Damn.
back. Did the dragon like see the Mind Flayers and be like, I'll come back for you in a minute, and then come back and fight us?
Well, no, he killed the Mind Flayers.
In like 3 seconds?
I mean, Mind Flayers are not that big of a deal,
It
and
was
he
very
is.
fast.
I mean,
I thought
here's something else to keep in mind. Mind Flayers have a hit points of about 75. They weren't moving a whole Elder Brain. They just took a sample and had a small group that were going to infiltrate the city and move their way and get where they needed to be. Because they couldn't have a whole bunch of Mind Flayers go up there. And they can't move a whole Elder Brain. So it was a pretty small group of maybe 5 or 10 Mind Flayers.
just like
Each of them with
the elite of like, you're gonna go on to the next one.
Mind Flayers only have 75 hit points each. They're really good at a lot of things, but taking hits is not one of them. A dragon of that CR is perfectly capable of doing almost that much damage in a single breath weapon. And even if they survive that, pair that up with a few attacks, and it's really nothing at all. It only takes a few turns.
That's so crazy.
Good stuff.
They're infiltrators, not fighters, and you got rid of them.
totally meant to do that. Yeah, definitely. That was intentional.
Pretty good play.
I thought that was very funny when you did that because I was like,
Pretty good play.
oh, they're going to be like a hint of something's happening because they're going up and like whatever. And then you said you did that, and I went, cross off the list.
Wow.
That's so fun.
Uh,
This was so fun. This was so good.
So Lizzie isn't asking the question I expected her to, which is something along the lines of, what was the deal with Laszlo and what he wanted?
Oh yeah. What the
Oh
heck
my
was
god,
going
I
on?
forgot. I literally deleted Laszlo from my mind because it's confused me so much. Please explain. What the fuck was up with this man?
He seemed to me to just be like a clear cut, like just lunatic. It's like I just want
mean,
to do
that's-
something
that's-
cool.
He's just like, I want my experiment to be the best one. I don't care about anything else.
Kind of. So Laszlo and Dorothea were both heavily invested in eugenics. They fully believed in like taking evolutionary science to its final solution, to like create an apex of life, which is hard to do in a world with dragons and things like that. And essentially, they were trying to make something of that span and realized that the world was going to end before they were going to finish what they wanted to do. But the primary difference is that they came from two different schools of thought on why they were doing that, and they never communicated that to each other. Um, Dorothea was very interested in having that for herself. She wanted to be that apex. She wanted to make sure her and the people associated with her were at the top of the food chain always. Um, the Laszlo was at a very different frame of thought, where he considered himself a philosopher. He wanted such a thing to exist, not for him to be it. He never thought he was going to be the top. The alterations he did to himself was purely experimental and just making sure he was alive to do the things that he needed to do. And when Nyx killed him, he believed that she was absolutely as far as they were going to get in this world, and he decided to invest everything he could into Nyx's success. Tragically, in his eyes, that also meant challenging her and pushing her to be even more. So he didn't really care that much if he got through the door or not, but he needed to make sure that he put everything he could into getting through it so that Nyx would have to put in her all to stop him.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Um,
So fucked up.
he just believed that Nyx was the most impressive creature this universe could offer, and he wanted her to prove it. And that's obviously not entirely true. There's much more dangerous creatures out there, but he considered her adaptability in a bad situation to be her utmost power. Because I have to Dorothea and Laszlo, just a little insight into my brain. They're representatives and apologies for the fields that I'm interested in. They're the worst of the fields that I participate in and put into a single individual, and so that's why they mattered a lot to me. But so that's how they. Sorry, I lost track of my brain there. I don't really know what I was saying anymore. But that's why they existed that way. But oh yeah, I get it. So anybody who's like interested in evolution or just ecosystems in general understand that the biggest, baddest monster of any ecosystem is not necessarily the most powerful one. You know, wolves are the apex predator in, or used to be in, large parts of the East Coast, but you're not going to find them anymore because it doesn't matter how powerful a wolf is if the ecosystem moves on without them or they get hunted to extinction by a weaker creature. Doesn't really matter how strong you were. Nematodes are among the most successful creatures, um, which is better than like you know like giant sea creatures like the giant squid. They're more successful than giant squid, even though the giant squid is more powerful. He considers Nyx to be the same way. Nyx is adaptable and powerful in her own ways, and most importantly, a survivor, which is something that clearly things like dragons don't have. Therefore, she is the most important.
God. Crazy. You always do shit that fucks with my brain. I mean, nothing's quite fucked with my brain like Talos did, but that's different.
Oh, with Talos.
But
Every villain I've ever put you up against has like had a passing interest in eugenics.
they're also just like, I don't, which I think is one of the things that makes me so angry at them all the time, besides the fact that they're evil. But like, they just, every time you make a villain for me, you know, and I think it's just because you also know me so well, you know how to fuck with my brain. And it's
Well, they're all always like creepy to just the perfect degree. That's my favorite
they're
part.
always
Is
so
like
creepy.
they're all just creepy. Like my villain, like I mean, I didn't have a villain this campaign, but like last campaign, my villain was just big mean bad guy. But like your villains are always like just so creepy every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love
Yeah, and it's and like Azarius definitely had some like creepy shit, like, but he was also just a douchebag.
Yeah.
Like just a straight up douchebag. And like that's easy. That is easy for me to hate. But this like the entire time, like I thought I had this idea of Vlaslov, and I was like, I hate him. He's terrible. He's awful, and he is. He is terrible. He is awful. And then at the very end, he was just like, "No, Dorothea, don't attack Nyx." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Is he on our side?" Which is why, like, I then ran away and I left them alone because I was like, "Okay, so if they're not going to attack us, then it's fine." And then he started going for the barrier anyways, and now I realized that was because he was trying to get my attention again. He didn't like that I left and went to fight something else. He was like, "No, fight me. Show me you are worth what I put into you." Which is just ah.
I had a whole monologue that I didn't do because I was much too tired, but he was gonna like make allegories to like the rebus of alchemy and how stupid it was that like they were trying to create a finite creature as their like apex of all life, when clearly a creature that can shapeshift at will like Nyx um is the superior version. And like all this kind of just like heavy-handed, like I'm so much smarter than everyone else and she is the result of that, and that's why she's so great. And but I didn't get to do it because I was too tired.
I will say, I will forever love that the way we incorporated Nyx being a changeling was not that she was always a changeling,
Mhm.
and that it was that she was experimented on.
That was pretty
And
cool.
I kind of love that so much because I don't even remember why I wanted to do changeling. I think I just straight up looked up races on D&D Beyond and was like, yeah, that sounds cool, and ran with it. And Nyx is an amazing character and I love her so much, and she was literal bullshit from the beginning, and I love it.
That just happened.
Yeah, and definitely happens a lot for me. So, but it's worked out so far. I faced no consequences for my actions except for last campaign, but that was still pretty cool in hindsight. So,
God, you hated me for writing a love letter to you.
God, I hated you for so long. I was so pissed. I had nightmares about Talos for weeks. Like legit nightmares about that man. It was awful. Oh my God.
So I have only one more like big speech thing to do, but I talked a little bit ago, so I wanted to offer more questions and things about characters and stuff because I don't want to just keep talking.
I don't know if I have any questions about other characters.
I just started thinking about how in the last fight, every 2 seconds, I was asking like, "Where's Vulgrax? Is he in
Yeah,
my
you are.
anti-magic thing?" Because I didn't want to force him to reveal himself because that wouldn't have made sense. But that was why, like in the beginning of that fight, I thought it was funny that Ryan was like, "It's great that you're all controlling two characters," and nobody picked up on that. he was like, "This is really funny that you're all controlling two characters," and I like.
so oblivious. I need to.
I was too stressed. I was like
a
trying.
minute after that, I was like, "So Ryan, what do you want to do about like who controls it?" And he was like, just let me know when you want to take over." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And like we blatantly had that conversation in the middle of the
I was way too stressed out.
I was just like, when do you want me to
dying.
take over? And he's just like, just interrupt me whenever you want. I was like, okay. But I didn't want him to, because it didn't make sense for him to be like, it's
Yeah.
me. I was just gonna wait,
I-
but I didn't want it.
I really,
wanna
really
wait
wanted him to get
too
revealed
long.
earlier.
I did too. That's why I kept being like, is he
Yeah.
in the anti-magic thing? Is he,
And
is it, did it
I
happen?
wanted him to
Is he
be, but I wasn't gonna cheat.
Because that is one thing about Quipper, is Quipper is his true form.
Mhm.
The Azer was the disguise, but Quipper was always like his true face. So he lied to you guys,
casts
but like,
disguise self. She actually transforms.
Yeah, I physically would.
but,
Yeah.
but I thought that was funny, and I was
I'm
so
kinda
sad
bummed
that I was so sad that Aether was gone before Quipper got revealed. Because I was thinking, like, there's a couple ways this could happen. Either one, he accidentally gets revealed because there's a lot of anti-magic going on right now. Or two, like, we kill all the bad guys, except for him. And at the last minute, he realized, like, the only way I'm getting through is if I manipulate them again. So that I could see, like, if we killed everyone before the last barrier went down, I was going to have him be like, hey, guys, it's me. You don't got to kill me. I'm your friend. But that didn't happen either. So, it's great. I'm sorry.
It's so funny that you say that because, and Ryan even mentioned this to me after we finished, but how Nyx pulled out the drawing that she did of the crayon family for the painting, which, I'm so happy that I did that. But
It
that
was
Cooper
even,
still
like-
in it.
Yeah, Quipper's still in it.
Cooper was still in it. Nyx didn't write him out just because he manipulated them and lied to them, which unhealthy. She cut out toxic people. But in the end, she still like forgave Quipper. Like she still considered him part of her family, and like they're just. I mean, they were like foils of each other. They were one and the same, and so I don't think at any point. I think Nyx would have totally fallen for another manipulation from Quipper if he had just revealed himself and was like, "You can't kill me. It's me. I've been hiding this whole time."
That was my
Surprise.
plan. And honestly,
And
like,
I would have fallen for it. Nyx would have fallen for it.
that was
She would've been really-
that was actually a big point of contention whenever me and Ryan were thinking about like the last fight of like you guys versus Quipper, if that ever happened. Was I was always like, if Quipper in that moment like reveals himself and he's like, I was the bad guy the whole time. I always thought that like the way that would go is I would reveal myself and then he would say like, you can come join me if you want to and like work for me. And me and Ryan talked about it for a long time. We were like, obviously Aether would say no to that. Because Aether's a good person, and she'd be like, you're a manipulator and you're evil and you're terrible. We were like, would Lizzie say no? That was
Lizzie-
always something we were very, like, unsure of. Was we were like, I hope they would say no. And I was always like, it's okay. I'll just make it really clear that he's, like, super evil. Like, I'll be like, I manipulated you the whole time. I'm evil.
You
I
would
did all
literally
this. I'm
had
such
to
a...
say that.
You're all dumb and I'm great.
You would have had to clearly have been
Yeah.
like, I was manipulating you, for Nyx to be like, you were manipulating me?
Yeah.
Like, literally, if you showed up and were like, hey, Nyx, I'm alive. You want to go be buddies and do crime together? Like,
Yeah.
hell yeah.
We were definitely, like,
She would've
actually...
done it in a heartbeat.
We were genuinely like concerned about that because we were like, that was like the one thing that we couldn't control was like we could try to get to that point, but once we got there, it was entirely up to you guys, like whether or not we fought or whether or not you joined Quipper. And like if you got to that point and you were like, you know what, yeah, it wouldn't have made any sense, but like, what if
I
you
would have worked
did?
with it.
It would have been like, what do we do now? And I was like, eventually I kind of came to the decision that like because he was like secretly evil, I was like, if they do agree to join him, he might just like trap them and like have them killed or something like that. Like make
Send them on a death mission.
Yeah, like be like, oh, okay, cool, come on in this back room and meet the guys. And then once we get there, I'd be like, now get them! And then like you'd have to fight through like henchmen or something. I was like,
You were
trying
kind
to
of a
think
liability.
I was trying to think of some way to like force you to fight me because I was like, I can't guarantee they'll do it willingly. Especially before he died, it was a big issue. After he died, I was like, okay, now it's a little obvious that he was like a bad guy the whole time. But even then, I was like, I bet I could get back in though.
You could. Nyx would have done it too. Like, Aether would have had to sit her down and been like, Nyx, like, come on, honey.
Especially later on, Aether was not taking like anything from
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah. She was Nyx's impulse control. And Nyx would have just been like, but Quipper's alive, he's back, like, sure, was he a dumbass? Yeah, but I'm a dumbass, like, you know, and just gullible and just wants family and friends, and yeah.
We even made up an NPC, like random like bruiser guy, that his whole purpose was just to distract Crumbs during the fight. Like we would like get to wherever like Vograx's hideout was, and it'd be like, "Ah, it's me!" And then he'd have like a big burly henchman, and Crumbs would be like, "I'll get that guy, you get the other guy," and then Crumbs would like tackle him into another room, so that it would just be like, you two would quickly.
That was the guy who drove the limo.
Yeah.
Pick you up.
He was literally just a character made entirely for the purpose of getting Crumbs out of the room, so that I wouldn't have to fight myself. Because
That
would've
makes sense.
that would have been weird.
That would have been
So
awful.
fun.
But
Oh my
it was
God.
a lot. I wanted it, but I feel like I was pretty content with the way it went. And even though Aether personally wasn't there to see it, at least Coretta was, which was worth it. At least. It was good.
Yeah, I'm sad she
You
wasn't
start
there for
crying.
that. What?
I said, Krenna, you dipped so you could start crying. You were like, I need to go so I can just cry.
Yeah, I was like, I just need to not be here. No, I'm really sad that Aether didn't see the Quipper reveal, but I'm very happy that she didn't see Azarius get killed.
Really?
What?
Really?
That's
I don't know. It just
killing of a
it's just-
parent is never good, even
That's
no matter how
fair.
bad they were.
That is
She's
fair.
done it before herself, and she also like by proxy killed her brother too.
I also
So-
think that like it was probably better the way it went, because even like the moment Aether went through, I kind of made the decision of like Crumbs is not going through until Azarius is dead. Like at that point, like Crumbs as a character did not value his own getting through. He didn't really care. At that point, he was like, if he's like the second Azarius saw Aether go through, Crumbs was like, I need to prove to this man that she's better than him. That was literally like that immediately became my objective, was like, I am going to kill him now. And then that's why like when I was thinking about it too the whole time, I was like, what am I gonna say? And then when I killed him, I was like, she's better than you now. Because she got through and you did.
Did any of you guys have any pre-planned like lines or monologues?
Never do.
I did
Whatever.
actually. I was thinking about what Quipper was going to say to you guys for months. Literally, the second I had the idea of the character, I was like planning that monologue that never happened.
I do really like that it was Celia's fortune that got him through the door.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was good too, and that was why
Yeah.
like
Never used mine.
yeah. I actually the reason I found out about Celia's fortune again was because I was going back to old episodes Quipper was in and trying to like find things that I could reference when he revealed himself again. So like that
So good.
that quote that you had in like the video that you made, I was like going back and looking for stuff like that to see if he could be like, oh yeah, you remember
Where's
when
your
I said this? Like, this is what I meant, or whatever. Like, I was looking for things like that, and in the process, I saw that, and I was like, we've never used that before. I should tell them about that.
You want
Yeah.
a fun secret about the tarot readings? And this affirmed every belief I have about like tarot and other things
Oh,
like
wait,
that.
okay, hang on.
And just
While I-
fortune telling as a whole.
I think I know what you're gonna say anyway, but really quick, I
Mhm.
also want to say, what a great hint at the fact that Cripper was evil when Ryan was like, oh yeah, you're like in the tarot reading, he was like, oh, you're totally fucked up and gonna do evil shit. In the tarot readings, and Cripper was like, see, I told you this was bullshit. There's no way that's true. When like he was 100% evil and gonna do evil shit.
Yes, there was
I thought that
for
was
sure that
so
I did.
funny. I was like, I totally had to
did
play
get
it off and
hints.
be like, that's bullshit. That's not true. No way. When Ryan was blatantly like, yeah, Quipper's evil and gonna do bad stuff, and Quipper was like,
And I still
no,
didn't pay
no,
attention.
not me. I'm a great guy.
Well, at that point, I was still like suspicious of Celia, so I was like,
I thought it was very funny.
is
I didn't know how to
reading
respond when Ryan called me out like that. I was like, deny it. Oh, me, I'm not evil. I'm a great guy.
manipulation? What's happening right now?
I thought it was funny. But anyway, I'm sorry, Ryan.
So no, that's a great point. So a fun secret about that tarot reading was that I actually accidentally mixed up the cards for Nyx, Aether, and one of Quipper's. And like it wasn't like I switched them, but like they just got like all messed up and in my notes and I just had a problem. And the funny thing about that and why I think tarot reading, is so silly is because even though I had the wrong cards for the wrong people in the wrong order, I was still able to take the vague meanings of the card and adjust them for the character and for like the past, present, and future whole dealio. So even though it was all messed up and none of it was right and none of it was specifically designed for you or your characters, I was still able to make it work for you and your characters.
Oh, Corona left.
Yep.
Has vanished.
Her Wi-Fi in that part of the house probably went out.
Yeah.
Hello?
Howdy.
I just like
Well-
everything froze. So restart.
Sure stuff is pretty
Also,
quick.
Keela, I totally understand if you don't because it's very long, but I hope you do enjoy watching the earlier stuff. And I also hope you forgive us because we were still getting our, we were still figuring out this whole streaming thing. And I
We're still
also
figuring
think I was so, I can't watch some of the early episodes because I talk so damn slow. I don't even know if that improved.
I watch all of them on 2x speed.
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah,
You have
absolutely.
I just like
Because,
remember what happens and I like find that specific scene.
Honestly,
I have never watched them.
You should.
I don't really find our episodes extremely entertaining on regular speed, but when I put them on 2x speed, I genuinely laugh at shit. Just because I guess like just
Yeah.
the pacing of it, but like
Mhm.
just it gives me the impression that we're quicker than we are, and I always found it like
Yeah.
we would make jokes and shit, and I would laugh at them genuinely. But like if I watch it on 1x speed, I fall asleep.
I can't stand the sound of my own voice on recordings because it's such a higher pitch.
I've gotten used to it.
Well, get used to it.
Yeah, you
Doing
definitely
another
just have to.
Ah.
I do hate it though too,
I-
because like especially when I'm doing weird voices, which I always do weird voices because I make weird characters. I hate it because then I watch the streams and I'm like, that's not at all what I think that voice sounds like. Like I think Crumbs sounds like kind of low pitched and jolly, and then I listen to it and I'm like, he just sounds like weird. I don't. It's just not what I think he sounds like.
I broke my nose on an idiot's head, and since then I've deviated septum, so my voice is really really nasally. So whenever I listen to it, I'm like, oh god, why is it that way? But also, Keyline, you can't just drop you on a D&D stream after being our like best watcher and then not tell us what the stream is.
Yeah, Keyline, drop a
And
link.
also, you gotta watch on 2x
Go for
speed.
it.
It's so much better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
plus-
it's 141 hours. So,
Is
Yeah.
it really?
yes.
I thought it was only like 80.
I
Oh.
checked our stream things on Twitch and it said that we've streamed for 141 hours out of the 250 for like some kind of achievement.
That's disgusting.
Well, we're gonna break
Unfortunately,
that
though,
record.
I
eventually.
I know.
I will say, if you watch all of our videos, I mean, like Ryan said, but I'll repeat it because it's mostly my fault. I'm so sorry for all the technical problems. There's so many. We have some super choppy episodes, some that just don't exist at all because I'm a moron. Like, it's just
One day I'll make a like video for the heist episode because I remember
that'd be cool.
I think pretty much everything that happened because that's just my brain. And then I wrote extensive notes for I think what was the episode name? Special delivery when we get Don Brasco's head because that one didn't end up saving either.
Did we release anything for those missing?
Not particularly. I just put
so.
in
I mean,
video
like-
descriptions before, like the one episode that was lost completely because I didn't save it. I just put a description in the video before and after it saying like, we lost the video, but just know we did the heist and we succeeded, and that's pretty much all you need to know
Yeah.
And Aether got some goggles.
because it was pretty
Thanks
self-contained.
so much for telling us your thing, and thank you for the shout out.
Mind Players RPG.
Having RPG in the name, I think, is generally just a good idea. So people know what they're getting into as opposed to Goblin Conspiracy. That said, I love her name.
I love how we
Um,
were like, what should we call ourselves? The Goblin Conspiracy. Yes. And that was
Yeah,
it. No
it was a,
preparation.
the Goblin Conspiracy was also the YouTube channel that we made briefly for our acting group in high school.
Actor
It
Studio.
was disgusting. It was horrible. Honestly, what bothers me it's the dumbest, most petty thing, but what bothers me the most about that YouTube video is that me and Zach Lambert made the video about like we called it like Old English whatever, but I have since learned that is not Old English, it's Shakespearean English, and that small distinction infuriates me excessively. I wish I could go and change it to say Shakespearean English rather than Old English.
I think you can.
I'm
I don't have access to
extremely
that YouTube
embarrassed by the Puff to Tough video, but
Oh,
I
I
think
watched
it's
it all
way
the
too
time.
funny to get rid of.
I watch it all the time, I hope you know.
It's very funny in the
My
stupidest
wiggly
way. It's
puff
very like
evolved into a wiggly tuff.
Anyway, I just
Have
put
you not seen it? Oh my god.
It's so
Oh
funny.
my god.
You have to go
I
watch
will
it.
send it to you later.
Oh my god. No, I feel
it's
like I have to
really
watch it.
embarrassing.
Oh wait.
But anyway, I just directed a bunch of people to it. So anyway, you can enjoy that.
Yeah.
But I have one final big thing to share about my like creative process in creating Cardinfall, and maybe debatably one of my biggest failures in Cardinfall. So you know the whole thing with like, you know, do you know the whole deal about the door and how the world was ending, and the uh and actually I can talk a little bit about what that lore is in a more specific way.
Yeah, the Court of Goblin.
The Court of Galadon. The Court of Galadon is, in the most vague terms, the first universe to exist as far as they understand it. There were a few beings of immense power, probably wizards, but not specified. But these people, who were represented by the masks, got together and realized that their universe was ending. The whole like collapse and all of that stuff didn't have to do with the masks. They weren't causing it, they didn't want it. They were people that saw that was happening, realized there was no way to prevent it. So instead of preventing it, they made sure there was a way to restart the universe. Whether it would have happened without them, they aren't sure, but they made sure that it would happen. And they made sure that there was a mechanism by which people could decide what their next universe was going to be like, for hope that there would be, they could make a better universe, basically. But in doing so, they lost any agency. So they made sure to call themselves objects instead of people, and took the like pronoun it to represent that, because none of the masks had any of the agency of the people that had them before. They didn't understand what was good, what was wrong. They didn't understand anything about like your world or how to interpret it, and they never once decided they could lead the next universe. So what their only existence was, that they were there to present people an opportunity to change their universe, the next universe. So that's how they happened, and who knows how many like regenerations of universes, potentially infinite, before reaching you. But that's where the mask came from, and that's what they were. Might have been their original group name. They could have been the Court of Galadon as a group of wizards, or it just kind of happened at some point and really meant nothing. But that's not what it always was. Before it was that whole mechanism, the Court of Galadon existed as a physical city that you were going to enter, and you would go to this city and speak to the like King of Galadon or something in an existential, like weird, extra dimensional city. And then you would like maybe have to debate or argue or maybe fight with the other people in order to make a crucial decision, which was, do we restart the universe or not? The reason why I got rid of the whole city and stuff was because Critical Role came out and they had a floating city, extra dimensional city that had like similar vibes as Galadon. So even though I made Galadon before that, I decided that it was too similar and I wasn't going to do it, and I got rid of it. But I did still steal the idea of Galadon, but I took it from like SCP, which is like internet creepypasta kind of deal, with like within a specific genre. And I was inspired by that, and I created my own thing. So it was still like kind of stolen, but that's what it was originally supposed to be. And then that didn't happen because Critical Role. I liked them very much, but Matt accidentally stole my idea because the world makes brains function similarly. But anyway, one of the big ideas with that I wanted the end to be, instead of being a door where you decide what the next universe was going to be, the real point was, are you going to be are you going to decide whether you're just going to let this world continue and the world will keep going as it is, and for better or for worse it'll keep going and live on. Maybe it'll regrow, maybe it'll die out like a flickering ember. Or you can decide to restart it and give it another go, basically. You weren't going to have any influence on that next world at all, unlike with this version. But it was like, it left it up to you whether you're going to keep this universe or make a new one. Um, and I was going to have a bunch of different NPCs represent both good and bad perspectives on that decision. Like Felder and Draxus specifically were supposed to be relatively good characters. I mean, they still weren't good, obviously, at this point in planning, but they were better characters. And Draxus was going to be in support of keeping this world going, and Felder was going to be in support of ending it. And let's see, the Omar was going to be in support of ending it. Azarius was going in to be in favor of keeping it because he had a lot of power here that he didn't before. I hadn't exactly decided where Delilah and Laszlo were. I think Laszlo wanted to end it.
Dorothea?
Sorry?
You mean Dorothea?
Dorothea, sorry. Dorothea was probably going to vote to keep this universe. Laszlo would have kept to end it. And that was going to be the decision that you all had to come to. And it's very Dark Souls-esque if you ever actually bother to learn the lore of Dark Souls. But it was also heavily inspired by a movie called I think it was called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is all about a figment of a person's imagination of a girl who exists in the imagination of a person who's thinking of killing themselves. Um, and that was kind of the vibe that this universe was going for. But as that time approached, like after the break, and the way that you guys were talking about the whole situation, and when I talked about the masks and the implications of them, every time you talked about it, you were like, all right, so we got to do what we do to figure out how to save the world. So in my mind, I went, this might not be a decision that they even feel like participating in. I have two players in the form of Matt and Lizzie who both usually decide upon on a path and then go full blast and don't usually take a lot of time to second guess. So I was like, there's a chance that they're just going to go, clearly saving the world is what we're here to do. Why are we even talking about this? And then just go. So that's when I kind of lost the nerve and went back on that idea and instead decided to give you the opportunity to change the next universe.
I'm pretty open-minded if you could convince me. I'm pretty
I-
convincible.
I think you're open-minded, but once you set your mind, that's it.
That's fair.
I think I wouldn't argue that point with you. I definitely think that if Nyx had been given the option, she still would have restarted the world if there was an opportunity to make the next one better than the one before it. Just because she would be thinking like, oh, there's so many lives that could be saved if we just keep going with this one. But also, like, if we just restart it and made it better than what it was, then these people wouldn't need to be saved. They'd already be fine. Or they'd already be off to a better start. It's like a clean slate for everyone involved, including herself. And so I honestly think that if you had given Nyx that choice, she probably would have surprised you with what she decided or her thought process.
I think it depended on which one of my characters. Quipper, I think, would have kept it because he finally had power, and like, why give that up once you have it? But I think Crumbs is just so too far aware of the fact that Cardinfall is hell on Earth that it's like the best thing that he could do to protect everybody would just be to like just reset it.
Mhm.
But
The best way to protect everyone is mass genocide of everyone.
I mean, at some point,
Yeah.
like if like in Cardinfall, all of their lives are hell and suffering. He's like, at this point, let's put this sad universe out of its misery and make a happy one. I think. I mean, it's depressing, but like, Cardinfall wasn't getting better. It just was
No.
not gonna happen.
I mean, maybe. Who's to say? But
I doubt it.
yeah.
Probably not.
Corruption was deep.
I mean, maybe
there.
after we killed like Azarius and the Senate and everybody else who was significant, maybe, but like probably not.
It was a far stretch.
But
I like that, Keelan. Credit. What do you think Aether would have done?
That's why I haven't been able to interject because I'm like racking my brain. I think Aether definitely would have. I don't know because my first instinct is would have restarted it. There's no hope left. But her whole thing was like, no, there is hope. No, I don't know. Because the moment that we learned that we could like influence the world, she was like, that's it, I'm done. Like this is literally my only purpose in life. Just make things a little better. I don't even have to be alive in the next universe. I just want to like make something better, do something good. She's still trying to redeem herself even though she didn't do anything wrong in the first place. That's just who she is. I don't know. I feel like ultimately restarting probably would have been her answer, but it would have taken a while to get there.
There's one additional caveat that I had in my mind as we approached the end, but I wasn't making an available opportunity to you. Obviously, the reason why the masks were here is because there was an unbroken cycle of restarting, but I never actually got rid of the option to prevent the world from restarting because
could have
you
told the
could have
guy not to paint it.
no, actually, any
No?
one of you could have said, I closed the door, and that would have been it.
Oh god.
I didn't know you could close the door. I thought it was more of like a magic door that doesn't actually
Understandable
have a door
to
on
think
it.
that.
I thought it was just like a hole in space.
But
Like, do we have to be like in the door to close it?
you could not walk through the door then close it. What you could have feasibly done also is sent some people through and then closed the door behind them. But that would also prevent you from going through.
Mm.
But yeah, so that was an option. That was always an option to you, and it never actually got rid of that. I
have
just
a
took it out of
question.
the core theme.
What would have happened if during the beginnings of the Stone District, if one of us put the mask on?
So, when I was specifying, like, hey, when you put on the Mask of the Cartographer or whatever, be careful that you pick the simple one and not the long one. Because I made the Mask of the Cartographer and the Mask of the Sculptor. And originally, so they were both in prototype and neither of them are finished. But and I think one of them is like sort of an in-between of both. But it was going to be a very, very powerful artifact that you could have used. Much more powerful than you actually saw in the end game if you put one on. And it was very complex. The cartographer could have done stuff like in Bioshock Infinite, Elizabeth can just summon things into the battlefield. And that's what the cartographer could have done, because he would have created extra dimensional spaces of like alternate timelines where there was something here. And that's what he could have done. So I made like mechanics for like, here's a big supply crate full of magical items that you can only use for as long as this magic is active. So like if you had weapons and you stood over that, your ammo would be magical because the ammo that you're taking from it is magical, and it would be like really powerful. You could get like potions from it and things like that. He also did stuff like you cast freedom of movement and other really cool spells. the sculptor could do things that changed your own form and could do a lot of flesh to stone nonsense. That's what he did a lot of. But every time you did that, this was also inspired by another SCP, is it would gain more power over you and you would become more affected. The more you wear the sculptor, the more your flesh turned into stone. Once you reach a certain point, you're like totally under his control. You are no longer you wearing the mask. You are the sculptor of Galadon.
Why?
And he had full control over your body. So yeah, that was what would have happened there. It would have been a very, very powerful asset to you. But the more you wore it, I put in mechanics, the more you wore it, the more of a problem you would have taking it off. And the more influence it would have over you. But it
In
would
other
have been very
words,
helpful.
It's like the mask from that Jim Carrey movie.
Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was that. I can even show it to you. I made both the monster and the item, the cartographer of Galadon.
Mm.
I have one more question, and I think this might be my last question. So clearly Zykia didn't go through, but Nyx made that little plug for a hot snake goddess. So I guess my question is like, did we become gods? Did we become like because originally I know like the three heroes were kind of just like an idea. They weren't like actual people that kept like resurrecting. They weren't like souls being the same person over and over again. It was kind of like an idea that there was always three heroes at the end of the world. And so I was wondering if like in this case that was still the same, or is it kind of like because we went in separately, like a little different, like play around with it.
So each of them went separately and kind of gave different deals. But the three heroes also weren't just at the end of the world. They were always there whenever the world needed it.
Mhm.
Obviously, you guys in the last campaign and some other NPC characters. But I am actually not at liberty to say because I don't know, and I'm not the judge of that. Karena is. But by my interpretation, if you were to make direct gods, you as gods, you would have had to say that. You suggesting that unit of family might have some ramifications that creates vague equivalents of your characters in divinity or something else like that, but more likely it's a more abstract kind of thing. If you said, I want me in there as me or as a god, you might have turned out the other side as a god. You mentioning a snake goddess might have created a snake goddess, but all of them in more abstract terms,
Gotcha. Okay.
at least in my interpretation. But again, I'm not in charge.
I guess we'll figure it out in the next campaign.
Ooh.
I liked the idea so much that I retroactively wrote it into my own lore for my D&D campaigns. But my interpretation of it was just that if you choose, you can choose to either be there or influence it. If you choose to influence it, you cease to exist. But like, you kind of send like ripples, which I assume is like the heroes. They were just like, we want the world to be safe, and then as a result, they get like resurrected over and over again to like make sure that happens or whatever.
As opposed to like, the Mad Mage who became proto god beholder that they encountered in the second campaign, or
I could see like
the
Vecna
the two dragons.
was probably like a ripple of some guy that was just like, I want evil in the world, and then it's like Vecna exists.
In this world, actually, Vecna was just an original creation of the world. Vecna just kind of happened. Because like also, just because mind flayers didn't get through to the other side, doesn't mean that mind flayers don't exist in the next world. Because they could just happen, just like they did at some point in some other universe. It just means that they don't get to start out on the other side as a proto deity or start out with a massive empire. Because when the mind flayers previously came through, they were just like, I want you to put a massive civilization of mind flayers that rule over the cosmos. And he went, all right. And that's what they were. They just started the next universe existing as a very powerful thing. Whereas now they're going to have to start by my interpretation, they're going to have to start and live and rise to power just like everyone else, if they exist at all.
I'm gonna put this out there real quick. Obviously, you know how I am. There will absolutely be Easter eggs. May or may not be references. However, different universe.
Totally
Very
different.
world.
Not the same lore. I'm taking a lot of creative liberties with the lore of this world.
Very
Yeah.
excited. I'm so excited.
Everything started out after the Big Bang. The laws of physics and magic itself doesn't have to apply at all. Because I mean, my world was like the whole like planar disk idea kind of thing in a more abstract way. Whereas I made it pretty clear that like the one that came before was like full on planets, like our world.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's nothing for this new world. Nothing like in the new universe that has to resemble mine. And also, you got a question from Keyline.
I feel like I don't know, because the painting isn't really a hint. It's honestly just like one of those writing prompt open-ended things. I don't know. I don't really want to say anything about it yet. It's gonna be fun.
I'll say that I already have my character.
Yes.
I also have my character.
Struggling.
I have several dice sets for my character.
You're welcome.
Courtesy of Krona and also courtesy of my mad need for pretty things that click clack.
Yeah, I can say the name of the world because it doesn't matter. The universe of Liadina is the world that you will be living in.
I'm so excited. Ooh.
I still don't know whether or not I want to make a serious character or another kind of jokey character.
What did you think of the character designs we talked about?
I liked a lot of the ones we talked about. Here's the thing. I don't want to steal one of Ryan's character ideas, but I did ask him for some inspiration, and he got my brain cogs turning at least. Any DB character could be fun. I'm still just
And I put out vague archetypes. You could take any of those and it's still very yours. But
I've
also,
had
Keyline asked a
serious
question.
characters, and I've had very much like Crumbs was not a serious character. Quipper was barely a serious character. Digit was not a serious character, and I seem to do pretty well with not serious characters.
It
But
became a serious character.
yeah, they all become serious eventually. Like Howl was a serious character, and I still think Howl was my favorite. So it's kind of it's hard to know what I want to do, but I don't know.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how different will your characters be from your previous characters? I can't answer that question.
You are the DM.
That's what I'm still
I think
debating.
I can answer that in a numerical scale. If we're assuming 1 is exactly the same and 10 being so vastly different, it's hard to believe that the same person is playing them. Gosh, I would have
think
to say it's closer to the lower end of the scale.
Yeah.
like a 4.
Yeah, like a 5 or a 4. Like I said, my blueprint is hot and queer, so I really can't very, very far from that. It's physically impossible for me. I want to be attracted to my D&D characters, because who doesn't? So for me, it'll still be really fun, but I don't think she'll be very different from a lot of my characters in the past. But the fun thing is, you've only ever seen one of my characters. So, as far as how different she will be from Nyx, very, I think. I can say very different in a lot of ways. Not as feral. Yes. Yes. And a very, very different mechanics, very different things that I'm used to. I'm trying out some new stuff, spicing it up. I'm so excited. Like, I want to just like pull all my dice because I have her dice right here, some of them at least, and I want to like show them off and be like, these are the vibes, but like I don't want to spoil things yet. We have so much time before the next campaign starts, and
Yeah,
so
we
much
do.
time.
Anytime.
Yeah, we have so much time. Like, we have so much content we're gonna have to like create in the meantime because we're not gonna be streaming during the school semesters because we're full-time college students. It's way too hard to do. And Karena would explode if she had a DM and handle her crazy, amazing life.
In a
So
musical.
yeah, all of us would die. Matt and Ryan are graduating, so
But you guys not? I
that's.
thought you were both seniors.
I'm graduating a semester early, but not a year early.
I'm not, because I want to do independent studies and internships.
I'm gonna finish my I'm gonna finish my degree, my major, in a semester early, but then I have to do an internship. That means I'll graduate on time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Like
I will
143
probably do that
credits.
with.
I have like 144 credits when I graduate. It's horrible.
You get a double degree.
Nope. I mean, kinda. I get a certificate. But
but yeah, I think I know my goal is I would love to play like over our winter break or like session 0 stuff, maybe start.
That'd be very cool.
That would
I
be
also want to
fun.
do that.
I would love to do that, especially because I'll really miss playing after a semester of not. And I will need to throw some dice around to decompress. But yeah, for the whole fall semester, we're not going to be streaming, so we're just going to have to figure out ways to create content, and maybe that means
Probably art.
Yeah.
beautiful art. That might mean sneak peeks into our characters through little things like, ooh, these are the dice, or these are the vibes, or like.
we could also do. I mean,
Character silhouettes.
I'm just throwing this out there as an idea that we don't need to stick to, but we could do like very brief, unplanned, like just two people talking for like an hour.
Just hanging out,
Yeah.
Are you
talking
like
about
just
We could just
stream, just
like if
talk?
me and Ryan are both free on a Saturday, we could just come here and rant about D&D for an hour. Or like if Karena and someone else are free for like an hour, they could just show up and like talk about character
I would
ideas
love to have
or
like
something.
when Critical Role's third campaign starts, just talk about it.
We could do that.
But that's going to require that I stay caught up, and we all know that I am shit at that.
I mean, we could just do like the first few episodes or something, but also get better.
I still want to do it, and no one else seems to want to do it. I think we should do a narrative telephone.
I would be so bad, and it would not be worth doing.
It would be funny.
I can't do accents. It wouldn't be good. I don't.
Part of the fun, though.
Also, just putting this out there, I think we've stolen enough from Critical Role.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never watched Critical Role.
We can't just copy all of their things.
I'm doing good.
What else have we copied? Character art is not a thing that they own.
The whole D&D stream concept.
That's not. You can't. That's not true.
Critical Role.
That's not
No,
exclusively a Critical Role
of course
thing.
it's not. It's obviously not. It's obviously not individual to Critical Role to have a D&D stream. But doing a D&D stream and then copying their other streaming stuff too? Come on.
No, I get that.
Wait, what?
Also, I don't think people could tell, what kind of characters I would want to play just by watching me DM. And it'd be very hard for you to figure out, like, even looking, like, I send Karena character ideas all the time, and we talk through them and figure them out, and then
I
I'm
did
like,
not know which one you were going to choose.
yeah, and then I throw them out before the thing starts, and I'll be so sure about it. I go from stuff like a dumb vampire himbo to a feral little 12-year-old boy who was raised by a bunch of tree witches.
Which one?
I'm pretty sure I've only heard like half of the ideas Ryan has come up with, and I don't think I've even heard all of them. Like, I think that you've just told me some of them, and then the other ones you've told to Karena, then chopped them and just never told me about them because you might pull them back up.
Basically, the way it went is I would always tell you all about them, and you would always hate it. So then at some point I just stopped, and now I only talk to Corinna about it. And then sometimes after I get excited about it because I talk to Corinna so much, I flood over to you, and you're like, I still don't care, and I'm like, all right.
I have to physically hold you back sometimes from telling me about like the current character you're going with for it, because I'm like, I need some surprises. Like I need some things that I just
I
don't know about.
love Ryan's current character so much.
I do too. And
I'm
also,
so
Lizzie, I haven't told you the main deals about my character,
You haven't, and
And don't.
good.
and I won't.
You already know too much about my character, and that's a problem. So I need to come up with other stuff that you don't know.
You keep trying to squeeze lore out of me, and I'm like, no. I'm not cracking under pressure.
I want to talk about D&D.
No.
Oh, have you told Corinna yet about your little sidekick friend idea?
No, but I will at some point. But don't talk any more about it. That is
Like a
future
bird or something.
stuff. Future stuff that nobody else can know about.
Except me.
Gosh.
I know everything.
We have already
I will
discussed,
message you later.
but
Ryan-
both Lizzie and I have talked about what our classes are so that Matt can build
That is
around
fair.
it. That's
Corinna
what
did tell me your classes and races, just so that I could actually.
I didn't say what the races were. You just asked if there were any weird ones, and I was like, no.
I think you told me which races they were, but you didn't tell me like who was what. You just told
Or are
me.
they weird?
You just told me like two.
I might have told you because you asked Matt.
Oh.
You asked me later.
Maybe Ryan told me that.
So I didn't say what she was, but I think I might have said what I was.
Someone gave me two races and led me to believe that that's what you guys were, but they didn't tell me who was which one. They just said like, oh, these two.
But what
I'm also going to throw it out there for probably just Key Lime, because I'm guessing the other 3 people in here are us watching
Yeah,
the stream.
probably.
It's going to be very different because I've DM'd one time. So, buckle up.
It'll be fine.
It'll be an adventure.
It'll be great.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot actually. I already started making the character sheet. I forgot about that. I don't know what
I
it is.
loaded in D&D Beyond already.
Yeah, I know it doesn't look like it, but I DM'd for 5 years at this point. If I DM'd another campaign, I was literally going to explode. So,
Fun fact, my next character's character information sheet is longer than 1 page. Already beat Nyx. Already has more stuff.
Well, you
but it's
also
even
have so that's
more
good.
incomprehensible than Nyx's was.
There's a lot of just. I'm going to pull it up and just like laugh at some of the comments.
It's like brain vomit. Like literally, I was on FaceTime with Corinna making this character sheet.
Yeah, 'cause I was like, please write it down. Like, I need to be able to see it.
And I was like, started typing stuff, and literally, I was just typing like how I was thinking, and it is just a mashed potato mess of character stuff. It's so
Yeah.
fun. because I don't
You
know.
really just typed exactly what you were saying.
I really was. And Corinna has beautiful novels written out in like paragraph form, neat and beautiful imagery, like builds a beautiful, well-rounded character. I'm just like, is hot, is gay, done. Like,
I did way more what Corinna did. I sent her just like a paragraph story. I literally wrote like in as if somebody was telling a story, like this is how their upbringing was.
Yeah. And even like when I was giving some like necessary backstory lore to Ryan for the character, I also said it in novel form. So it works.
We communicate the same way, whereas Lizzie goes like, got hair.
Yeah, for real. Like I live off of bullet points. I live off of bullet points. And this character's sheet is at least 3 pages, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I did pretty good, but I really need to add a little bit more to this, because I have had some other ideas, but it really is kind of some of the stuff is incomprehensible, which I think is really good that we talked about it. Like you could ask me questions because some of it is just dumb stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
your backstory is currently technically in page length longer than Ryan's, but I think we all know which one has more content in it.
Beat that.
Yeah, minus the strong vibes. Also, I don't know if this is now we're just talking, but I don't know if you're gonna be doing it, but I really attached myself to some ideas I pioneered in this campaign, which includes every character starts off with a magic item that is specific, not very good. It's not very powerful and it's not like a game-changing item, but it identifies the character very well. Um, and I've really attached myself to that, and I don't know that we'll get that, but I've have the perfect one for Lizzie. And I talked about one for my character, but honestly, I'm not a fan of it, and I'm gonna need to.
I am obsessed with mine.
Yours
So
is so good.
obsessed.
If you like want it, then do it. I just can't personally make them, so I'm gonna need help with whatever ideas.
The big problem is I probably won't know who Matt's character is ahead of time, but that means I won't be able to make something for him. We could discuss like what he wants out of an item, and I could make it.
I could just like tell you, I'd be like, it could be one of these 5. Make all of them.
Make this vibe, and then you could decide which one to do. I think that's I really like that idea in general. I think it's a fun idea.
Mm-hmm. I'm so nervous now.
I can't believe Cardinfall is over.
Stop.
Finally. No.
It's not. It's not
I
over.
just-
Truly, finally though, I had such a great time, but it needed to.
If
to end.
I heard one more time, I'm so tired of it. I don't want to DM. I want to play now. I think I would like scream. Like I understand. I haven't experienced it, but I understand where you were coming from. But Ryan was always like, I don't want to plan. I just want to play. And I was like, well, we gotta get through the campaign. You gotta finish first.
I hadn't, just for like reference, I haven't played as a player in a proper campaign since Matt was my DM and we were playing 3.5, which was before this group started. So that was over 5 years ago. So that's been 5 years of me making characters and then not playing them. I've had some brief times where I've played like a couple sessions with some people, but they were never really proper campaigns and they never really went anywhere. So all this time I've just been like, I gotta play, I gotta play, I gotta play, and now it's finally here.
And I mean, I gotta say, I feel bad for Ryan too, because 15-year-old me was not a good DM.
You did
Just
some
bad.
really good stuff in some of the moments from those campaigns I'll legitimately remember forever, but there was more than a few times where we got up and we were like, time to play D&D, and you were like, I made nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it just happens sometimes. I don't know. Sometimes I would plan a lot down to like the letter, and it'd be very like intriguing and interesting. And other times I would just improv shit, and like I generally knew where the story was going, so like I could kind of get away with it. But it was generally like there was a lull in quality when I did not plan. That I will admit for sure. But
Also,
I also just
totally
wasn't that
not
great.
your responsibility, but we had 2 people who could not care less about the game.
Yeah, that happened a lot. When I first got into D&D and like wanted to start DMing, I tried to peer pressure all of my friends to play it with me, and a good majority of them were the wrong people to try and get to play D&D. A lot of them that just did not want to. But they did it because their friends were doing it. So don't try to get
D&D.
people that don't want to play D&D to play D&D, because they're not going to enjoy it. You have to put effort into D&D to enjoy it.
Also, Keylime, it's very cool that you cosplayed your character. That sounds like such a cool idea, but is very difficult to do. Especially if you play anything like a tiefling or an ASMR or anything like that.
Yeah, my last 3 characters would be pretty hard to cosplay.
Very hard. You could do Quipper.
I do Quipper all the time. It's
Yeah, you do
literally,
Quipper.
I literally decided like day 1 that Quipper's outfit is just my Renfest costume, and it's perfect. I thought it looked good.
I got some Aether-themed shoes today, but that's about it.
I think I could cosplay Astrid, and that's it.
Yeah, 10 out of 10.
Because I can't be Nyx. Can't do it.
I
can
can't.
do it in a week.
I can't cosplay my next character, but that's about it. I also couldn't cosplay Spoons.
I think I could do my next character. Pretty easy.
Yeah. I could totally do my next character.
It's you.
All of them.
Every single
All
one.
of the NPCs at the same time.
I think
There are so many of them.
I know at this point what classes I want to be. I'm torn between 3 races. But that's it. I'm like getting there. I'm close.
I have a question. Are they any of the ones we discussed?
Yeah, Ryan, I think you already have a pretty good idea of what I want to do. I kind of was already leaning, like, the one that we discussed the most, I want to say. I was already kind of leaning that way before I even had that conversation with you. But then after having that conversation with you, I was like, okay. Because that's why at some point I was like, now I just need to figure out whether or not this is good. Because, like, I was thinking it'd be good, but then I talked to you and you, like, confirmed it. So then I was like, all right, I just need to, like, look into this now. It's probably what I'm going to do. It's very exciting.
Well, tell me.
I will tell
Yeah,
Corinna.
tell Corinna.
I will tell Corinna all about it.
I will say I had a very, very different character idea for the next campaign originally. Kind of don't even roll your eyes at me.
It's very different.
It's very different. And then Ryan convinced me otherwise.
I think you will have more fun.
I will definitely have more fun. But it's
Your
very,
new character is more appropriate for this table.
yeah, I think so. It'll be fun. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
I hope you guys hate my NPCs.
Hate
I hope you just despise them. I mean, like, have a reason to want to kill some of them.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I was
excited
like, every time you've talked about planning for D&D, or at least at the beginning, nowadays you're very into world building, but at the beginning you were like, I don't know how to world build, I'm going to make NPCs. And you're like, I hope you like all of these.
Well, yeah, I hope you love
Yeah.
to hate them. And also,
Yeah.
I think pretty much all of the NPCs except one that I talked about creating before world building don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
There is one
a
that I
lot.
love that isn't even important, but I love him.
90% of my D&D ideas never happen.
Yeah.
It's very fun. I'm very sad we won't do a high school AU one-shot because I want to play Slime Wizard so bad.
I mean, never say never.
True, but not for now. I want to play dumb little Slime Wizard. And that's all. I'm just very excited about that.
Lizzie, you good?
Yeah,
You got a fez?
I did.
Should we end the stream now?
I think that's a great idea. We've been
Feel
rambling for a while.
It's
satisfied.
only
Mhm.
3 hours long.
Oh, wow.
For
Any
a
final
recap.
questions? And also, Key Lime, thank you so much for watching.
You are amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Follow us on socials for updates on what the heck is going to happen during this hiatus. Probably art. We're trying to get them in podcast format, but it's kind of hard. So
Was I supposed to be trying to do that?
there
Yeah.
is in fact a download button. I tried downloading it,
okay.
and my computer just had a little spinny thing for about 40 minutes, and then it just didn't work.
I can, if I have free time in my life at any point, I can attempt it.
So
Maybe
who
You can
knows?
also just transfer
heard
the
of
credit.
Yeah.
Well,
We might have Instagram takeovers or something. I don't know.
thank you so much for watching. I highly recommend you watch this at 2 times speed to catch up.
Sorry about the
And I
choppy
think-
ones in the middle there. There's some really choppy.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Episode 5 is good.
Is it?
Episode
what
5 is
happened
very
to episode
good.
5? What happens at
That
episode 5?
was everything. That was just the mess of the church and
Oh,
the
yeah. What a
that
great
whole
episode.
Golden.
I planned almost nothing for that episode. That's DMing for you. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. That's Cardinfall.
I'm gonna cry again.
It's over. Forever. We're never going to talk about it again. I'm kidding. We'll probably talk about it.
We're also going to delete all recordings.
This is it. This is it.
Please
This is
don't.
your last chance.
My heart.
It was just for you.
Okay.